Chapter 869. Shi Xiaotian carefully looked at the interpersonal relationship in the 3-second zone that the Han family young master provided her, and asked a few more questions. These were all things that the Han family young master had learned long ago. Intelligent people were always more relaxed when conversing. In just a few words, the questions and answers were all straight to the point, without a single word of nonsense. After understanding the situation, Shi Xiaotian was also impressed. This 3-second zone is indeed the best choice. This is the teleportation scroll for Danma City. The Han family young master handed a scroll to Shi Xiaotian. Teleport there directly. To prevent any accidents, our people will not have any contact with you anymore. Keep in touch with all news. That's for the best. Shi Xiaotian took the scroll. Then, you can go now. The Han family young master said. Yutian Shenming immediately rushed out and cheered, "Little sister Tian, you can do it." Shi Xiaotian smiled and nodded, and used the scroll to teleport over. On the other hand, the Han family young master immediately contacted Nitrite, so that the connection on his side could be activated. Nitrite's ability to understand the spirit of the Han family young master was very strong now. He was already prepared, and immediately started to make arrangements. With the complicated network laid out layer by layer, Shi Xiaotian's appearance could not be related to the heaven-defying nature in any way. At this time, Shi Xiaotian had already set foot on the land of Danma City. Ying Qi's main city supervisor was still here, so all business naturally went on as usual. Shi Xiaotian looked up and saw that there was a grocery store with Ying Qi's name on the street next to him. Shi Xiaotian was not in a hurry to go there. She was waiting for news from the Han family young master. There would be people in the 3-second zone who would greet Shi Xiaotian through a circle, which could be considered as a referral to Shi Xiaotian. The person who greeted him took the interview seriously, so there was no need to worry about the stranger revealing any flaws. Nitrite was already an irreconcilable rival of Ying Qi. He was like an insulator. His true intentions stopped here because he himself did not know. He only knew that the Han family young master wanted to make things difficult for Ying Qi, so he did his best to help the Han family young master. He hoped to see a good show, but he didn't want to stand on the stage himself. He was willing to be the hero behind the scenes. As for the Han family young master's arrangement, Shi Xiaotian would come to him immediately after receiving the news in the 3-second zone. The message that 3-second zone received was nothing more than a reminder, something along the lines of, "So-and-so asked me about you, and it seems like they want to interview you." This kind of message was meant to make 3-second zone feel less abrupt, and whether he accepted the interview or not could not be rejected through this message. At this time, Shi Xiaotian was already at his door. It was up to Shi Xiaotian to fight for everything. The message has been sent, find a suitable time to come. The Han family young master finally sent a message. The transmission of information in the game was very fast. As long as there was no offline segment, it would only take a few minutes. Okay. Shi Xiaotian replied. The moment the message arrived, the person came. It was too fast. Shi Xiaotian had already left the street and walked from another direction. She would ask the players on the road from time to time. From this moment onwards, she had really become a reporter. The grocery store appeared in front of Shi Xiaotian again. According to the information, this grocery store was the main office of the manager of the 3-second zone. Ying Qi would usually handle his business in Danmos. Shi Xiaotian didn't hesitate at all. When she saw the name of the store, she walked straight towards it. The doors of the store were obviously wide open, but Shi Xiaotian still knocked on the door and asked, "Is Mr. 3-second zone here?" The grocery store wasn't big, but it was very tidy. A player was standing behind the counter. When he heard Shi Xiaotian's question, he couldn't help but look towards a corner. There was a square table in the corner, and a person was writing something on it. He raised his head and looked at Shi Xiaotian. When he saw Shi Xiaotian look over, he replied, "That's me. Hello, I'm a reporter from Fun Gaming website. My name is Shi Xiaotian." Shi Xiaotian officially began. 3-second Zone had already received the news from the Han family young master, so he wasn't surprised by Shi Xiaotian's visit. He just looked at Shi Xiaotian and asked, "What's the matter?" "Recently, there seems to have been a lot of disputes between your studio and the players. Many things have happened. We at Fun Games have been following up on this matter. I'm here to interview you," said Shi Xiaotian. "That didn't happen here, so I'm not too sure." 3-second Zone replied. Shi Xiaotian said helplessly, "I know, it happened in Cloud City and Moonlit Night City. We tried to contact the person in charge there, but we found out that the person in charge of the main city had chosen to resign at this time. Later, we found out that it was not only the people in Cloud City and Moonlit Night City who had resigned. Some of them have already been interviewed by us. Because of this, we want to be responsible and interview the people who are still working here." "What do you mean?" 3-second Zone frowned. "To be honest, the things that the people who resigned described in the interview are probably not what you want to hear. We think that since they are people who resigned, there might be a lot of things that they said. That's why we came to you, a person who is still working here, to hear the voices of the people who are still working here," Shi Xiaotian said. 3-second Zone immediately understood what he meant. It seemed that these people who resigned didn't say anything good about their old company during the interview. Although not everyone was so unkind, there were still people like this. 3-second Zone had heard that during the director's weekly meeting, there was a director who jumped out to express his dissatisfaction with the boss. He even said it to his face, not to mention behind his back. This was a public relations crisis. 3-second Zone instantly realized it. And it was rare for a reporter from Fun Gaming website to be so kind. If they weren't kind, they would have reported those people who said bad things first to attract attention. Why would they care about the truth? This meant that they couldn't neglect the reporter's visit. This was their chance to clear their name. Since 3-second Zone stayed, he was naturally thinking for Ying Qi. After understanding Shi Xiaotian's meaning, he couldn't help but ask, "What did they say?" "This. I can't say," Shi Xiaotian said. "Why?" "Because we want to hear your objective and honest voice. We don't want to have a conflict because of their words," Shi Xiaotian said. "Oh, then, what do you want to know from me?" 3-second Zone had already started spreading the news when he asked this. This was a public relations crisis. A large number of people from Ying Qi had left, and the people who resigned were publicly exposed. If this news was publicly reported, how would it affect the players? One had to know that these people who resigned were the higher-ups of Ying Qi. Ying Qi didn't have any secrets with them. If they really wanted to speak, there were too many things they could say. And now that they were all working for a competitor, if it was arranged by the competitor to smear Ying Qi, then it would be even harder to explain. Of course, it was impossible to shut these people up. This matter could only be carried out through the media. It was rare that Fun Gaming website didn't interview and report step by step. Instead, they conducted an objective interview from both sides. Otherwise, if they first reported on these people who resigned, it would undoubtedly make things worse for Ying Qi. 3-second Zone didn't have confidence in such a big crisis. At the same time, he felt that he didn't have the right to handle it. He could only think of a way to contact his superiors. His director had already resigned after this incident, and from the departing director, he already knew that 5 Nights was the only director left in the entire studio. Furthermore, he also heard from the people in charge of the other main cities that 5 Nights was temporarily the chief supervisor of all the main cities. The handover in each city was in progress, and the 3-second Zone just hadn't had its turn yet. Through these connections, it wasn't hard for 3-second Zone to contact 5 Nights. He opened his friend list and sent out the message. Not long after, he received a notification from the system that 5 Nights had added him as a friend. He immediately sent a message, "What's going on?" 3-second Zone hurriedly explained. 5 Nights was furious. He had always felt like he was abandoned on a big boat. And now, not only did they abandon him, they even wanted to sink his boat. It was as if they weren't giving him a way out. Shameless. Despicable. Five Nights was furious. What do we do now? 3 Second Zone asked. Is he still with you? Five Nights asked. Yes. You deal with him first. I have to contact the boss. Five Nights said. This was a big matter. How could he dare to make a decision? Right now, Unparalleled Genius wasn't online. He could only go offline to contact him. He was still calculating. That resigned supervisor was so annoying in Five Nights' eyes. He threw down a something urgent, I'll be back in a bit, and ran away. 3 Second Zone started to stall for time with Shi Xiaotian. He said he wanted to treat Shi Xiaotian to a meal. Everyone chatted while eating. Shi Xiaotian declined. 3 Second Zone was so insistent. Shi Xiaotian had no choice but to agree. After leaving the door, 3 Second Zone immediately brought Shi Xiaotian to the restaurant that was the furthest from their grocery store. On the way, when Shi Xiaotian asked some small questions, 3 Second Zone would only answer after careful consideration. He especially liked to use words like, I personally think. Shi Xiaotian knew that 3 Second Zone was pretending. Wasn't she the same? She could already tell that 3 Second Zone was stalling for time. He was avoiding the important and dwelling on the trivial. He must have already contacted someone with more authority. And right now, there were only 2 people who had more authority than the person in charge of Ing Qi. The operation went very smoothly. Ing Qi's current situation forced their boss to stand on the front line. Chapter 870. Five Nights quickly went offline and contacted his boss, Unparalleled Wonder. Unparalleled Wonder took the news very seriously. Studios like Qi naturally valued their reputation and image in the eyes of the players. This was also the main competition between large studios. If their image was ruined, it would be extremely detrimental to the long-term development of the studio. Qi was most worried about the players having a bad impression of them after messing around with the 10 Guilds Alliance. Fortunately, the 10 Guilds Alliance was not successful in manipulating the public opinion. Qi got some professional gunmen and quickly gained the upper hand. However, the current situation was different. This was leaked by someone who had left Eagle. It didn't matter if it was true or not, it would be easy for the players to believe it. Moreover, this wasn't just a rumor on the forums, but an official report from a professional gaming media. The weight of this news was not to be underestimated. Is the situation reliable? Unparalleled Wonder asked Five Nights on the phone as he prepared to enter the game. The manager of Danma City is in contact with the other party. It sounds like it's true, Five Nights replied. Let's go take a look first. Unparalleled Wonder hung up the phone and entered the game. Five Nights did the same, and he had already prepared a teleportation scroll. After waiting for the boss, the two of them immediately teleported to Danma City. 3 Second Zone was relieved that the two of them arrived so quickly. However, he could not take back his promise to treat them to a meal, but at least he did not have to go to the other side of the city. 3 Second Zone estimated a restaurant that was about the same distance between them. After informing the other party, he changed his route and brought Shi Xiaotian over. The restaurant food in the game was still mainly meat with various fruits. There was no possibility of Chinese food appearing for the time being. It was said that the alchemists were constantly working on it. The players were at a loss. How did the alchemists get involved in the cooking system? This was too confusing. 3 Second Zone and Shi Xiaotian arrived first. After asking for Shi Xiaotian's opinion, he asked for a fruit platter and recommended their Danma City's special barbecue. The so-called special barbecue was nothing more than the monsters in Danma City. It could not be found in other places. At the end of the day, only animals would be eaten by players. Players simply couldn't bring themselves to eat humanoid creatures, let alone elemental creatures, demons, and ghosts. Hence, their choices were rather limited. None of them were really here to eat. Shi Xiaotian didn't mind at all, and he even dealt with the 3-second zone. After ordering, he couldn't help but look at the door. Not long after, he saw Matchless Wonder and 5 Knights. Ying Qi's director's regular meeting had also been held in Danma City, so the 3 seconds area had seen the boss and the director. 3 seconds hurriedly stood up and said to Shi Xiaotian with a smile, "Great reporter Shi, you're in luck. Our Ying Qi's boss and Wu Ye's director personally rushed over when they heard that you wanted to interview them." "Oh. Really?" Shi Xiaotian was pleasantly surprised. Matchless Wonder and 5 Knights wasted no time in walking up to them. Shi Xiaotian's lack of recognition was the truth, and 3-second zone quickly introduced them to each other. "Miss Shi, are you a reporter from FunNet?" Matchless Wonder said nonsensically. Yes. Shi Xiaotian continued to be excited. "Then Duo Momoduo is your colleague?" Matchless Wonder asked. "That's right. Boss, do you think I don't have enough weight?" "That's not a problem. I can contact them immediately, and they will be more than happy to interview you. If we knew that you would be interviewed personally, I think the website would have sent them." "Ha, there's no need to go through so much trouble. It's all the same. Matchless Wonder laughed. 5 Knights sent a message at the side, "If Duo Momoduo publishes a draft, the weight will be higher, and it might be better, right?" Matchless Wonder saw this message and just smiled. He replied to 5 Knights, "Since they're tracking and interviewing people, how can they publish a draft under the name of a certain reporter? This is the website's overall operation. It doesn't matter which reporter it is." "Oh, that's right." 5 Knights suddenly understood. "Miss Shi, can I trouble you to take a look at your reporter ID?" Matchless Wonder asked. "Ah. That's right. If you didn't mention it, I would have forgotten." Shi Xiaotian immediately went to get his reporter ID. She was very familiar with the technique of hiding behind the shield. When she showed it to Gu Fei and the others, Gu Fei only saw a flaw in her hand shape, but didn't notice anything unusual about her movements. In terms of hand shape, Shi Xiaotian had also learned about it from Gu Fei. Now that he had corrected it, it could be said that it was watertight. Of course, it was inevitable that he would be a little nervous, but the so-called professional quality meant that no matter how nervous he was, his facial expression would be as flawless as the technique. The skill lasted for 15 seconds. What Shi Xiaotian was most worried about was that these 15 seconds weren't enough for these people to appreciate. In theory, this was impossible. There was no point in looking at the ID in the game. Only appraisal skills could determine everything. This reporter ID only had a few words, so it shouldn't take 15 seconds. It was possible that these people had never seen a reporter ID before, so they were curious about the content and kept looking at it. Shi Xiaotian was silently counting down in her heart. She had decided to put away the shield before 15 seconds. She believed that this was enough time for these people to appraise the content of the reporter ID. After that, they could look at the content of the reporter ID as much as they wanted. In the end, such a dangerous situation did not occur. The fact that this was the result of the appraisal proved that the document was genuine. As for the content on the document, it could be easily scanned. Matchless Hero was not in the mood to waste his curiosity on this. After confirming the authenticity of the document, he nodded and Shi Xiaotian put it away. 5 Knights and 3-second zone naturally wouldn't say anything. Their boss had already nodded. Many players don't know about this, and we don't have the habit of showing it to others. The boss really isn't an ordinary person, Shi Xiaotian said as she put away the shield and reporter ID. Hee, I have some reporter friends, so I know that this ID exists in the game, Matchless Wonder said. These words caused Shi Xiaotian's heart to skip a beat. The information from the Han family young master said that Ying Qi's studio didn't interact much with in-game reporters, but Matchless Wonder had personally said that he had reporter friends. It seemed like there was an oversight. She didn't know if this oversight would cause any trouble, but from the looks of it, Matchless Wonder trusted her completely. At this time, the 2 dishes that 3-second zone ordered were served. Matchless Wonder glanced at them and said, "The food in the game isn't that great, Miss Shi, you should just put up with it. If the conditions allow, I can treat Miss Shi to a feast." "Where are you from, Miss Shi?" Their conversation slowly began to flow. Shi Xiaotian's preparations for the day weren't for nothing. She had already planned out how to lead to the topic she wanted. Starting from the topic that 3-second zone had mentioned, she would slowly move on. She would also ask some questions based on Matchless Wonder's answers. Some of the more sensitive and awkward questions were asked by Shi Xiaotian without any hesitation. She acted like she was being objective as she walked towards her destination. Right now, the outside world is saying that Ying Qi will never be able to recover from this setback, but from your attitude, it doesn't seem like that's the case. After discussing the various dangers that Ying Qi was facing, Shi Xiaotian brought the topic to this place. Of course. Although the other side used unfair methods to cause us to lose a large amount of talent, the foundation of Ying Qi's studio is still there. There are tens of thousands of frontline workers. As long as they are here, our resources will continue to be replenished. Moreover, the loss of talent and the 10 guild alliances' actions didn't affect our resources at all. If any player has any needs, they can contact us and we will definitely give them a satisfactory answer. Tell me, how can our studio be affected? I heard that a large number of the higher-ups left Ying Qi's stable customers. Shi Xiaotian said. Nonsense. Matchless Wonder said angrily, the people can leave, but all the resources are still with Ying Qi. The players need equipment, items, and scrolls that are suitable for them. We have always believed in the rationality of the players. Therefore, we will only attract the players with good quality products at a low price. We won't rely on relationships. It seems like Ying Qi's rich resources are the source of your confidence, right? Shi Xiaotian asked. I can say without exaggeration that Ying Qi's resources are the most abundant and comprehensive among all the studios in the game. We can satisfy the needs of the players at all stages and classes. Matchless Wonder said. I wonder if I have the honor to take a look around. After an hour and a half, Shi Xiaotian finally got to the point. She said this in such a reasonable situation, and no one could tell that she had any ulterior motives. However, Matchless Wonder hesitated for a moment, but quickly nodded, of course, no problem. I'll make the arrangements. 5 Knights didn't question his boss's decision. Moreover, he didn't think there was anything to worry about. Although they could take whatever they wanted from the storage, he believed that his boss wouldn't make the arrangements for no reason. 5 Knights could understand his boss's intentions. Ying Qi's resources were something to be proud of. Using the fun gaming website's reporters to publicize it would be a great advertisement. None of the gaming studios had ever done something like this through official websites or news reports. Instead, they would gather a bunch of minions to go to forums where players gathered and shout. Compared to this kind of slash and burn method, this kind of opportunity saved time and effort and had a greater impact. It could also shatter the rumors about Ying Qi's demise. Miss Shi, please wait for a moment. I'll get someone to bring a scroll over. We'll teleport there directly, Matchless Wonder said. All right. Shi Xiaotian nodded. This was within their expectations. Teleporting directly into the warehouse would give them the coordinates, and they wouldn't even know which city they were in. Then, they would teleport away. It was a foolproof plan. Other than that, Matchless Wonder also informed Eternal that someone was coming to visit the storage, and that a few experts were coming to take a look. Who is it? How many are there? Eternal asked. A reporter from Fun Gaming website, just one person, Matchless Wonder said. Reporter. Eternal was confused. Yes, he's here for an interview. This matter is really big, and it seems like even the gaming website is going to report about it. We need to be the first to come here, so we have to accept this interview, Matchless Wonder said. But to come to the storage. Eternal didn't say much. To be honest, this wasn't something he should be concerned about. He just listened to his boss, and did whatever he said. He didn't ask for the reason, and just carried out the orders. This was the principle of the Eagle Group after they were hired. There's no problem with this person's identity, but who knows if his hands and feet are clean. That's why I asked you to arrange a few brothers to keep an eye on him, but don't go overboard. Don't let anyone see through your intentions, Matchless Wonder ordered. Understood. Eternal nodded. Then, he personally took charge and selected a few brothers. They were all quick-witted people. The scroll will be here soon. Miss Shi, would you like to eat some more? Matchless Wonder arranged everything and returned to the dining table. No need, these haven't been touched. Shi Xiaotian said. The person who delivered the scroll was naturally from the Eagle Group. He had received instructions to deliver the scroll personally, and when he came over, he saw that there were 4 people. It seemed like he wouldn't be able to fly back on the scroll. At this moment, 3-second area was also hesitating. He wasn't sure if he had the right to visit the storage. In the end, Matchless Wonder took the scroll and asked Eternal if he had already arranged everything, so he immediately used it. The two of them were hesitant about whether they should step forward or not, but Shi Xiaotian and Wu Yi did not hesitate at all and directly entered the teleportation formation. Matchless Wonder clearly didn't think of this detail. The two were still hesitating, but the teleportation was already complete. In the end, the two were left standing there, looking at each other in dismay. Miss Shi, please take a look. This is our storage. The teleportation happened in an instant. As soon as they arrived at the new location, Matchless Wonder immediately began to introduce them. But I have to make one thing clear. This is only a part of our storage. We don't only have one storage. Matchless Wonder said. Oh. How many storage units like this does Inky have? Shi Xiaotian asked. 20 of them, all about the same size, Matchless Wonder said proudly. That's amazing. Shi Xiaotian exclaimed, while noticing the extra players in the storage. They weren't working in the storage. Instead, they each took a corner, and their gazes would occasionally wander over to her. Shi Xiaotian took note of their positions. She was currently in a 360-degree position, so any movement she made would be seen by them. Miss Shi, please take a look. This is the scroll area. These are the usage scrolls, this is the learning scrolls, and these are the strengthening scrolls, Matchless Wonder introduced. The usage scrolls were single-use scrolls, the learning scrolls were permanent scrolls, and the strengthening scrolls were mostly enchantment scrolls. These scrolls only appeared in the market after the players reached level 40. Regardless of the type, the scrolls in front of her were all piled up like a mountain. Shi Xiaotian took a few steps closer. Eternal and the others were very nervous. Fortunately, Shi Xiaotian stopped when she was about a meter away from the scrolls. She stretched out her head and looked forward, trying to see the labels on the scrolls. Ice Strengthening. Shi Xiaotian read out the name of the scroll. She then looked at the length, width, and height of the scrolls. Matchless Wonder was very pleased by her surprised expression. Ice Strengthening was a passive skill. After learning it, the user's ice-related skills or spells would be greatly improved. Currently, its main customers were ice mages, and it was known as a must-learn skill for ice mages. However, there was no such skill in the skill tree for ice mages. It was a skill that could only be learned through abnormal means. Hence, the price of the scroll was very high, and the demand for it exceeded the price. Many new mages in the game knew that they had to save up from a young age, so that they would have a must-buy skill scroll when they became an ice mage at level 40. Since there were ice strengthening scrolls, there were naturally lightning strengthening scrolls as well. Shi Xiaotian shifted his gaze to the side and saw the lightning strengthening scrolls. The number of lightning strengthening scrolls piled up was even more exaggerated than the number of ice strengthening scrolls. Matchless Wonder helplessly explained, currently, the number of lightning mages and ice mages in the game is disproportionate, so the price of lightning scrolls is relatively low. These scrolls aren't easy to find in the market. Shi Xiaotian said. Matchless Wonder smiled and didn't answer this question. Shi Xiaotian didn't need to ask to know that this was Ying Qi's marketing tactic. They purposely controlled the number of scrolls in circulation, so that the price of the scrolls wouldn't drop. This kind of behavior was probably carried out by all the studios. Although the demand for lightning scrolls was low, Ying Qi was still hoarding them. It was obvious that he had his sights set on the future. Perhaps in the next patch of the game, lightning mages would become gods and lead the way. Lightning enhancement was definitely a necessity. Originally, the number 1 mage in the game, Qianli, was an lightning mage when he was drunk. With such a powerful character, it was enough to cause a trend. But the problem was that Qianli's strength when he was drunk had nothing to do with whether he was an ice or lightning mage. Even if other players were lightning mages, they wouldn't be as strong. This made the studios that were hoarding lightning mages depressed for a while. Even if you're strong, don't be so ridiculously strong. Being too strong would weaken the power of the role model, making people understand that it wasn't a matter of class. After Matchless Wonder introduced the learning scrolls, there was a pile of strengthening scrolls. These scrolls weren't any less valuable than the learning scrolls, but Ying Qi's stock was just as abundant. As Shi Xiaotian walked down, he finally had an idea. He sent a message to Gu Fei and the others, "Get ready." Cries of heaven, "Get ready." Gu Fei hurriedly informed the others. Everyone's spirits were roused, and they stood up one after another. They came to an empty space and divided themselves into 2 groups, 8 on each side. The empty space on their left and right was the preset location for the portal. When Shi Xiaotian used the scroll, the portal would appear from here. Chapter 871. There were many items in Inch's warehouse, so they had to make the most of the space. Shi Xiaotian's teleportation point was where they entered the door, so there was a lot of space. After looking at the scrolls for a while, the space in front of them was used to its fullest. The items were piled up in rows, and there was only a 1-meter wide passage between the 2 rows. Shi Xiaotian continued walking and naturally entered the narrow passage. Matchless Ying no longer had any suspicions towards Shi Xiaotian, but Eternal still continued what he wanted to do. It was impossible to keep an eye on Shi Xiaotian from multiple directions here. Eternal winked and allowed him to follow behind Peerless Genius with the marksman and kite. Matchless Ying continued to accept Shi Xiaotian's praises, while the 2 of them kept a close eye on Shi Xiaotian. As long as her hands didn't come into contact with the items on either side, it would be fine. There was also a pile of items at the end of the 1-meter passageway. It was right in front of Shi Xiaotian, so if she placed her hands in front of her, the person behind her would never be able to see what her hands were doing. Eternal stared at the end of the passage. His thoughts were, if Shi Xiaotian wanted to move the items, she wouldn't be able to move them from the top. If she moved them from the bottom, they would definitely shake, so he had to stop her. But on second thought, she had already gotten the items, so she might not be able to snatch them back. After some thought, Eternal decided that at this position, as long as Shi Xiaotian's hands were out of his sight, he would immediately rush forward. In the end, Shi Xiaotian didn't give Eternal this difficult problem. She stopped about a meter away from the end of the passage, and her hands were hanging by her sides. She smiled and turned around, saying to Matchless Ying, "I roughly estimated the number of scrolls you have, and it's really shocking." "This is only 1/20th of our inventory," Matchless Ying said. "Are the other warehouses also filled with scrolls like this? Why don't we just store all the scrolls in one warehouse?" Shi Xiaotian asked. "Due to the recent changes in our personnel, we have to reorganize the inventory of the warehouse. We are only halfway through the process. Once the inventory is complete, we will divide the warehouse accordingly," Matchless Wonder explained as he turned around and was about to leave the hallway. Since it was only 1 meter wide, the 2 of them couldn't walk side by side. Matchless Hero turned his back to Shi Xiaotian and stopped talking. Forever had to turn around if he was talking to a kite normally, but since he had to keep an eye on Shi Xiaotian, he could only pretend that he was talking to Peerless Genius and walk backwards. However, even though he was talking to Matchless Hero, his gaze was still on Shi Xiaotian. Moreover, it was a little awkward to be spying on him like this, and Eternal was in a difficult position. Fortunately, One Kite was a good friend, and joined in the discussion. The two of them took turns to keep an eye on Shi Xiaotian as they walked backwards. They wanted to leave the passage as soon as possible. At that moment, Eternal suddenly saw the scroll on Shi Xiaotian's right side tilt. In the next second, Eternal confirmed that it wasn't an illusion. It was real. His gaze was mainly on Shi Xiaotian's hands. He was sure that Shi Xiaotian hadn't touched the scroll. Be careful. After confirming that it was an accident, Eternal yelled, giving Matchless Hero a fright. Matchless Hero followed Eternal's gaze and saw that the scroll beside Shi Xiaotian was on the verge of collapsing. Shi Xiaotian raised his head when he heard the voice, and he was also given a huge fright. At this moment, Yong Yong had already rushed forward and pulled Shi Xiaotian over. Although he was sure that it wasn't Shi Xiaotian's doing, he was worried that Shi Xiaotian would grab a few scrolls in the chaos. He was even more afraid that if Shi Xiaotian dodged, the scroll would split them in two. If that happened, Shi Xiaotian wouldn't be able to stop him. As soon as he pulled Shi Xiaotian over, the scroll fell to the ground, and in the blink of an eye, a scroll appeared in Shi Xiaotian's hand, causing his heart to skip a beat. However, before he could come to a conclusion, he saw the scroll fly out. Eternity came to a realization. He thought that the scroll had accidentally hit Shi Xiaotian's hand when it collapsed. The collapsed scrolls smashed onto the other side, causing the left and right sides to sway. This caused a chain reaction, and the 1-meter-wide passage was instantly blocked by a mountain of scrolls. The four of them looked at each other. Miss Shi, you're in shock. Matchless Genius was the first to respond. I'm fine, thank you. Shi Xiaotian thanked Eternal. Eternal nodded and turned to his two brothers, clean it up, make sure it's secure. The two players from the Eagle group nodded. One of them went to the next passage, while the other waited for the four of them to leave. Just as he was about to enter this passage, he heard the player who entered first shout, "Who are you?" Then, there was no reply. Eternal quickly turned to look at the passage, but he could no longer see the player. The player had already sent a message in the mercenary channel, "Qianli is drunk. Someone's in." Eternal didn't analyze what had happened, and instead shouted the situation to Matchless Genius. In a player's private residence, removing the permissions of others was the most effective method. The owner of the warehouse was the boss, Matchless Genius, and he was the only one who had this level of authority. Matchless Genius quickly entered the list of permissions to remove, and he was instantly dumbfounded. So many. What's going on? Hurry up and kick him. Eternal yelled at the boss as he rushed into the passage. Before he could even get close to the gap, a new gap appeared in the pile of scrolls. A warrior charged out of the pile of scrolls and slammed into Eternal. Forever was also an expert. He dodged the attack, but he saw a black shadow in front of him, and a sword light surrounded by flames was already slashing toward him. Eternal knew that it was Qianli's drunk. He had fought against Gu Fei before, and knew that the intelligence curse, which was supposed to limit the damage of a mage, had little effect on Qianli's drunk. Eternal could only cast an agility curse, and he couldn't dodge it in time. However, with his luxurious equipment, he was able to withstand the attack. He glanced at the gap and almost collapsed. It was a sea of people. Kick that woman out. Eternal yelled at Matchless Genius. Eternal cursed himself for being an idiot when he thought of this. It was impossible to enter a player's private residence without permission, and the permission that Matchless Genius had given was only to that reporter. There was definitely something wrong with that reporter. She was the team leader, and the instant that Matchless Genius gave her permission, he also gave the entire team permission. This was a conspiracy from start to finish, and it was a very heaven-defying conspiracy. Even though he had no idea how it was done, there was no point in dwelling on it. They had already suffered heavy losses this time, and it was more important to get rid of these people as soon as possible to reduce their losses. However, since the notification had already been given, there was no way that Shi Xiaotian would stay with the team. She smiled and pulled out a bunch of scrolls. Matchless Genius angrily removed her permission, but this could not solve the root of the problem for a team that had already been disbanded. Shi Xiaotian's mission had been accomplished beautifully. She had bought a full 10 seconds of time. The number of people who had come in wasn't 8, or 16, or even 24. There were 32 of them. This was far beyond their own expectations. 16 people was already their most optimistic estimate, but now, it was a full double. Matchless Genius removed Shi Xiaotian's permission, but it did not solve the problem at all. Qianli's name was very eye-catching in the long list of names, and Matchless Genius did not hesitate to take action against him. Gu Fei was just about to land a second strike on Eternal when his vision suddenly darkened. When it lit up again, he was already on a street. Shi Xiaotian was looking at him from the side with a smile. I knew it. Gu Fei was furious. This was the downside of being famous. People were always trying to take advantage of him. The next person to come out was Yun Zhongmu. He also looked helpless. Gu Fei was famous, but Yun Zhongmu's hatred was high. He had once looked down on Matchless Genius and led a group to kill him. Matchless Genius did not hesitate to take action against Qianli after he got drunk. After that, poor Matchless Genius came out on his own. Hidden behind the collapsed pile of scrolls were 30 extremely heaven-defying elites. They quickly rushed out of this obstruction. No matter how good Matchless Genius's equipment was, he was instantly killed by this group of tigers and wolves. What made his heart bleed even more was that the scrolls did not seem to have been pushed away by them. Instead, they had been pocketed. Just like that, they had taken an exit. How big of a loss was that? Matchless Genius, who had revived at the revival point, continued to kick people with all his might. His hands were shaking uncontrollably, and he was extremely angry. The veins on his face were about to burst. He received a system alert. Your heart is beating, fuck. Matchless Genius cursed without a care for his image. He was forced to go offline by the system. Fuck. The members of the Eagle Party, who were still struggling in the warehouse, cursed without a care for their image. There were only 5 of them, and their opponents included the 10 guild alliances Madman and Drifting. They were no match for them. They could only try to stall for time so that their opponents would not be so focused on looting. Then, Matchless Genius would clear them out as soon as possible. Who would have thought that Matchless Genius would choose to go offline? What was he trying to do? After forever escape from Gu Fei's sword, he continued to harass the enemy like a gorilla. Under his command, the other 4 brothers were still alive. However, he soon realized that they were still alive because their opponents did not pay much attention to them. They were focused on looting, and did not care about their attacks. This was because they had a godlike priest among them. If you want to die, you'll have the chance. But right now, we don't have time to play with you. We're all busy. Han family young master smiled and looked at Everlasting in disdain. Everlasting was furious, and he wanted to cast all his curses on Han family young master. He felt so powerless. It was too late to mobilize his men, and he could not beat his opponents. He could not even bother to harass them. The most effective method was that the caster was not around. Focus fire on killing them. Everlasting yelled. Focus fire on healing them. Han family young master was not in a hurry. Their opponents were all elites. If they focused fire, they might be able to kill one of them. However, he was not the only priest on their side. Although there was a chance that they would disappear before they could heal, that was only true for normal clerics. Mr. Han was an expert in controlling the rhythm and making use of the time difference. No matter how well they coordinated with each other, it was impossible for their attacks to land on the same person at the same time. As long as they could take advantage of this gap, their recovery would come into play. Han family young master was one of those who could do this. However, Everlasting found out that their attacks could not even kill a single thief. Then, a thief charged out from the enemy's formation like a gust of wind, wielding 2 blades in his hands. Currently, there were no assassins who wielded dual blades. Only berserkers were proficient in dual wielding. As for this dual blade assassin, Eternal had already heard of him. This was another old friend of his, Sword Spectre. Misty Ambush. Sword Demon was the only one who had such a powerful skill. Even if Gu Fei was arrogant, he only had equipment that surpassed his level. His attack skills were all very simple and common skills. Although most mages wouldn't have skills like Thunder Palm and Wall of Electricity, the system naturally wouldn't give out skills that surpassed their level. Another reason why it was so rare was that there were very few lightning mages. When Misty Ambush was used, even the elite members of the Eagle Party were caught off guard. 2 of them were hit by Sword Demon, but due to their magnificent equipment, they did not die instantly. Of course, the reason why Sword Demon had just been demoted by 2 levels was also because of this. However, with Sword Demon's serious attitude, even if he knew the power of Misty Ambush, he would not put all his hopes on this skill. His follow-up attacks came one after another. Everlasting did not have a priest with him this time. The 2 who were heavily injured by Misty Ambush did not have time to heal and were instantly killed by Sword Demon. Everlasting did not have time to catch up and quickly cast a curse of agility on Sword Demon. Sword Demon did not dodge and continued to walk towards the remaining 3. Everlasting was startled. He had once called Sword Demon brother and knew him quite well. He looked at him and said, as expected, "You still can't accept doing that." Of course, forever referred to looting. Under the cover of the Han family's young master's powerful recovery, no one came to fight. Instead, they crazily looted Ing Chi's inventory. Only the Sword Ghost jumped out to fight without any provocation. Sword Demon did not reply. He only maintained his battle state. He did not seem to have any intention of catching up with Everlasting. At this moment, the boss Matchless Hero calmly re-entered the game after taking a little sedative. However, when he saw the list of 30 people, he still felt a little depressed. But without saying a word, he had already started cleaning up. Han family young master had long noticed that Matchless Hero paused for a moment after he was killed. He did not have Matchless Hero as a friend, so he did not know that this guy was being forced. He only thought that this guy was an idiot. Now that someone was being forced out, he was the first to notice it. He could not care less about Everlasting and whatnot, and urged the others to hurry up. When they first came in, they were surrounded by scrolls. They casually took a few and put them into their pockets. At this time, they had already moved to the equipment area. With a glance, they picked up the good equipment that they were familiar with, and picked up the shiny equipment that they were unfamiliar with. Anyway, there was no way there would be any white or blue equipment here. A bunch of people were busy, but Sword Demon was fighting 1 against 3. However, with the help of a priest like Han family young master, there was not much pressure. Although Sword Demon was 2 levels lower, his equipment was not inferior at all. His attack power was also frighteningly strong. The 3 of them were being held back by him alone. Everlasting felt that their existence was meaningless. Matchless Hero's removal of authority was the only way to solve this. Retreat. In this situation, Everlasting did not want to die for nothing. He gave his 2 brothers a look. On the other side, Fifth Knight, the useless trash with no combat power, was staring blankly with a pale face. At this moment, he only had one thought in his mind: is Ing Chi really finished? Everlasting could not be bothered with this trash. For this kind of guy, it did not matter even if he dropped 10 levels, so Everlasting did not care about him. He brought his 2 brothers and rushed out of the warehouse while enduring the damage from Sword Demon. However, Sword Demon did not give up and insisted on following them out. Han family young master could only shake his head when he saw this. Sword Demon still could not reach out to snatch the goods. He understood. What he did not understand was, why did Everlasting and the others think of rushing out of the warehouse? Was this not courting death? Everlasting only reacted the moment he rushed out of the warehouse. At the critical moment, he suffered a huge defeat. He was extremely depressed and did not think carefully. The moment he walked out, he saw a surprised face covered by the light of the fire and sword. Everlasting fell down. Before he fell, he heard that person exclaim in surprise, "Why did you come out? Fuck your mother." Everlasting cursed in his heart. He actually forgot that after removing the authority, people were automatically sent out of the room. Qianli was drunk, so of course he would be outside. Coming out of the warehouse by himself was just like stepping from the 17th level of hell to the 18th level. The other two brothers, under the pincer attack of Gu Fei and Sword Demon, where could they escape to? Before he fell down, he heard Yun Zhongmu rush up and say regretfully, "3, why didn't you leave one for me?" "Sorry, this is a bit difficult for me." Qianli's drunken reply made them unable to die in peace. People started to be teleported out one after another. Matchless Hero's technique was considered fast. However, the 10 seconds that Shi Xiaotian cheated and Matchless Hero forced him to go offline. This operation was a complete victory. Everyone who was teleported out had a look of satisfaction on their faces. Chapter 872. Old Yun. The players from the 10 Guilds Alliance were the most excited. As soon as they came out, they excitedly went to find their big brother, Yun Zhongmu. Yun Zhongmu was kicked out very early. He only had time to grab a few scrolls and put them in his pocket. He greeted his brothers and asked, "How was it?" Everyone patted the pockets on their waists and grinned from ear to ear. "Awesome! That was awesome!" Zhu Xian, one of Yun Zhongmu's brothers, expressed his thoughts on behalf of everyone else. Do a head count. Han family young master was also sent out at this time. He continued to maintain his abnormal calm, which was a stark contrast to Yun Zhongmu's group. Isn't this him? Unscathed in battle was holding a weapon in his hand to show to everyone. The person who recognized him was the only remaining director of Wonder Workshop, 5 Knights. Unparalleled Wonder only cared about speed when he kicked people. He didn't even care about the name of the player. 5 Knights had also been kicked by him in the middle of the fight. Now that he was in the hands of these jackals, he was as weak as a little chick. "You guys are too much." 5 Knights was finally able to speak. Han family young master laughed. "Can you guess why we were so much?" Han family young master didn't deny their actions. He only hoped that his opponents would understand that their actions weren't without a reason. This was revenge. Only then would it be satisfying. 5 Knights was in pain. He suddenly felt like he had no place to hide. He was the initiator of this battle with very defying the heavens. Although what he had done was for the development of the studio, the problem was that his plan had failed. It had been seen through and had been forcefully counterattacked. Those workshops that fought and killed didn't take it seriously. They thought that Unparalleled Wonder didn't have the ability to do so. However, this time, they had lost a large amount of resources. This was a real loss. If they took stock of the losses, they would be able to see the numbers on the books. It was impossible for the resources that the workshop had hoarded to be obtained by their own in-game workers. Most of them had been bought from players over a long period of time. When divided evenly, every item had a real cost. It wasn't like ordinary players, who only spent time and energy on equipment. Such a loss could be traced back to 5 Knights' misjudgment. He had offended someone he shouldn't have. Would the boss give him another chance? He did not care about 5 Knights of life and death in the game at all. What he cared about was his own future. In the storm of poaching people, he couldn't even be compared to the person in charge of a second-tier main city. He was the only person in charge of Yingqi who had been forgotten. He had already placed all his hopes on Yingqi, but now, with the current situation, would Yingqi still be willing to carry him? Why are you wasting words with him? Just kill him. Cloud Midnight said. For a character like him, it doesn't matter if we kill him or not. Just let him reflect on his mistakes here. The Han family young master's tone was too gentle, so gentle that it made Wu Yi even more irritated. Look, this is from your Ingqi workshop. Immediately, someone took out a piece of equipment from his pocket and showed it off in front of 5 knights, purposely trying to piss him off. I have it too, I have it too. There were many imitators, and everyone was fighting to show off. Scram! All of you scram! 5 knights completely broke down. He lost control of his emotions and waved his fists randomly, trying to drive away these guys who were showing off around him. However, his chicken punching skills were not enough in front of these people. A tall and mighty warrior waved his hand and sent him flying to the corner of the wall. You're looking to die. Everyone cursed and prepared to trample on him. However, Gu Fei couldn't take it anymore. Forget it, let's just leave it like this. Since everyone's out, let's go. Brother, you had been counting the number of people. At this time, everyone had already been cleared out. Including Shi Xiaotian, there were a total of 33 people. He nodded and said, everyone's out. Let's go. Sword Demon spoke. His expression was completely different, as if he wasn't too enthusiastic about the matter in front of him. He was very much like a passerby. Which main city is this? Han family young master looked up at the street. From the coordinates, it should be the main city of Madari in the northeast region. Brother, you had already checked his intelligence book. Their boss said that they have 20 warehouses like this. I don't know if it's true or not, Shi Xiaotian suddenly said. Everyone was slightly startled. Even with this warehouse, they weren't able to take away all the goods. If there were 20 warehouses like this, then the goods they took away wouldn't even be 1/20th of Ingqi's total storage. It might not even be 1/40th. This made them feel that the fruits of victory were too small. Their previous excitement was slightly diluted by this news. Everyone, you don't have to guess. As for the exact number, I can find someone to determine it. Han family young master said. How? Everyone was at a loss. The 18 former directors of Ingqi's studio. Han family young master said. It was obvious that he was going to use his connections with Yunteng again. Although the 18 directors who went to Yunteng couldn't take away the goods, they used to be in charge of the warehouses. They also had to do an inventory check with 5 knights. They were very clear on how many goods were in each warehouse. From this, the total amount of goods in Ingqi's storage was basically known. It was obvious how much of their goods were. Why are you still thinking so much? Anyways, there's nothing bad in our hands. No matter how little it is, it's still meat. Ingqi's fellows will feel heartache. Be more spirited. Yun Zhongmu roared at his brothers. These fellows were really too greedy. Once they saw that they didn't take enough, they became unhappy. Alright, let's go back to Cloud City. Han family young master gave out the teleportation scrolls. Some fellows were still reluctant to leave. They kept looking at the end of the street and mumbled, why isn't Ingqi's boss back yet? I really want to see him again. And that forever. Ha 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 ha. Amidst the high-spirited laughter, the teleportation circle activated. The 33 of them directly flew back to Cloud City. Very overpowered's headquarters. Take out all the goods and check them. After arriving, Han family young master said. Hurry up. Yun Zhongmu added. Of course, it was only directed at his brothers. He knew that although his brothers had joined very overpowered, they might not necessarily follow the orders of very overpowered's people. Thus, he often followed orders and added reminders to avoid awkward situations. Yun Zhongmu's brothers were all straightforward people. None of them coveted the equipment that they had taken. Their original goal was to making Ingqi's people suffer. For example, 5 knights screaming and screaming after breaking down was actually the most satisfying thing for them. What they wanted and pursued was very clear. The other things were naturally worthless to them. They weren't greedy at all. They all emptied their pockets onto the ground. Of course, there were still some good-for-nothings. For example, Zhu Xian's gaze was currently very erratic, but he was clearly one of Yun Zhongmu's priority targets. He came over and gave him a slap on the head. "You bastard, what are you up to? Hurry up. Damn you." Zhu Xian cursed as he emptied his pockets. Yun Zhongmu's people were the main force of this operation. They made up more than half of the 32 people. Next were the elite group and Drifting and his two brothers. Yutian Shinming and Unscathed in Battle were shamelessly dawdling. It was obvious that they were also planning something. However, when they saw Gu Fei standing behind Brother Yu with a serious expression, the two of them dawdled and finally came up to hand over the items. Their wretched expressions made everyone laugh. Finally, it was Drifting and his two brothers' turn. They didn't say anything and emptied their pockets without hesitation. Although Gu Fei was very suspicious that this shady guy would have some tricks up his sleeves, he really couldn't bring out any evidence. He told the Han family young master about this situation. In the end, the Han family young master's answer was, "I agree with hiding something. I hope that everyone will hide something. Then, we'll pretend that we don't know anything." Gu Fei really wanted to chop him to death. This base camp was a completely empty room that had been specially prepared for this time of the year. At first, everyone wanted to pour the contents onto the ground after rummaging through their pockets, but Brother Yu quickly stopped them. In the end, they did it one by one. They counted the items as they poured. When Drifting and his two brothers finished, 2 hours had passed. The items were also neatly piled up, but the room was still half full. It was really a lot. Since they had handed over the items, Yutian Shinming and Unscathed in Battle could only hold the list of items that Brother Yu had compiled and cry with heartache. Electric strengthening. "Qianli, I remember that you don't have this, right?" Yutian Shinming pointed at the electric strengthening scroll on the list and said to Gu Fei. "I don't have it." "What's it for?" Gu Fei said. "You can tell just by looking at the words, it's to make your lightning magic even stronger." Imperial Sky God Ming said. "Really? Not bad." Gu Fei nodded. Yutian Shinming looked at Gu Fei eagerly, but Gu Fei had already turned around and left. He didn't say anything else, so the temptation failed. At this time, there was a knock on the door. A player by the door opened the door and looked outside. It was 2 reporters, Duo Mudwa. "You're here." This time, it was the Han family young master who took the initiative to greet them. "Ah, we heard that there was exclusive news, so we immediately rushed over." Duo Mudwa's face was full of anticipation. "We won't let you down." The Han family young master let the two in and pointed at the half wall of resources in the room. "This is..." Duo Mudwa didn't understand. This was just snatched from Ming Chi's warehouse. The Han family young master didn't hesitate and directly revealed the truth. "Ah." Duo Mudwa was really shocked. Everyone also liked their shocked expressions at this time. Duo Mudwa's arrival was, of course, part of the plan that the Han family young master had made in advance. They weren't afraid of their actions being exposed. They hoped that the whole incident, from the cause to the end, could be completely restored in front of the players. This wasn't for the players to comment on right or wrong, but to use Duo Mudwa to publicize the way to deal with the looted resources. Throw them away. This was the idea that the Han family young master had casually suggested at the beginning, but everyone felt that it was a bit too wasteful. Moreover, the game company easily took back the equipment, which was also a very unpleasant matter. So in the end, everyone decided that they would throw them away, but not in vain. They didn't care who wanted to pick up the things, but they had to at least say it so that someone would know and come pick them up. Of course, it wasn't to this extent when Duo Mudwa first came up. The whole incident was caused by the guilds in Cloud City plotting behind the scenes. They wanted to destroy against the heavens. Then, they fought all the way until today's revenge operation was carried out. The people who participated in the process all came forward to speak for themselves. Duo Mudwa finally got a very comprehensive version of the incident. You guys are pretending to be our fun reporters? When he heard about the final part of the revenge operation, Duo Mudwa had some reaction. That's not the point, brother. Han family young master patted Duo Mudwa's shoulder and said, actually, we're just pretending to be reporters. It doesn't matter if it's fun to pretend to be you guys, or if it's just a game. Duo Mudwa looked at the organized information and was silent for a long time. In the end, he said, I think we still need to interview the people from Ingqi's studio. Maybe they can add some details that you guys don't know. That's your freedom. Han family young master smiled. Unless Ingqi could sway Duo Mudwa's will, it was absolutely impossible for him to guide the public opinion in this matter. For example, when 5 Knights started to cause mischief, there were a lot of witnesses. It was impossible for Ingqi to control all of them. Moreover, because of this incident, all of them were covered in dirt. They hated Ingqi to the core. Also, how are you guys going to deal with this batch of things? Duo Mudwa asked. Han family young master smiled. Throw it away. Throw it away. Duo Mudwa's surprised expression made everyone satisfied again. Everyone suddenly realized that sometimes, a different way of doing things could make people feel more satisfied. For example, throwing away so many good things. How shocking was that? It was much more satisfying than keeping everything in one's pocket. If they kept everything themselves, that would be too vulgar. There wouldn't be any sense of surprise at all. Why? Duo Mudwa clearly didn't understand. We just want to teach Ingqi a lesson. As long as they suffer losses, our goal will be achieved. We don't care about using such methods to obtain these things. Han family young master said. Wow, that sounds really nice. The channel was filled with discussion. Do you guys think he's hiding anything in his pocket? With his nature, he definitely has something, right? That's for sure. Definitely. Wow, Duo Mudwa seems to believe it. It can't be, these 2 idiots. They believe it, they really believe it. There are actually people in this world who believe this guy's pretty words. Sigh, young people really don't know how sinister people can be. I have a share in the channel. Han family young master suddenly interrupted. The channel was silent. Alright then, we'll take our leave first. We'll sort out the manuscripts as soon as possible. Do you guys need a final confirmation? Duo Mudwa said. Up to you. Han family young master said. Goodbye. Duo Mudwa and Han family young master left. Everyone's excitement had pretty much passed by now. Each and every one of them regained their calmness and quietly looked at their spoils of war, waiting for someone to speak and give instructions for the next step. Alright, in order to prevent any accidents, temporarily remove everyone's authority in this room. Han family young master said. Everyone nodded. By removing everyone's authority, the only person left with authority would be the sword ghost. No one would suspect the sword ghost, and by doing this, they would be able to dispel all doubts. Sword Demon laughed bitterly. He was the one who was the least enthusiastic about this operation. He didn't even make a move to take anything. But in the end, the one watching over everything had to be him. This was really helpless. After removing everyone's authority, everyone was automatically sent out of the room. Sword Demon then left. There's nothing else for now. Everyone has worked hard. Go rest. Han family young master waved his hand. Yun Zhongmu's brothers immediately went to get drunk. Yutian Shinming and Unscathed in Battle were still reluctant to part with the things in the room. But if they wanted to open a channel with Sword Demon, it was clearly impossible. Give me a copy of the list. I'll go find Yunteng's people to take a look. Han family young master said to Brother Yu. I only have 1 copy. Wait for me to make another copy. Tavern, let's go. Han family young master and Brother Yu left together. Shi Xiaotian, Drifting, Yutian Shinming, everyone left one by one. In the end, only Gu Fei and Sword Demon were left. Sword Demon looked at the door that was piled with half of the materials in the room. He was stunned. It's really boring to compete with the studio. Sword Demon suddenly sighed. It seems like there's no other choice, Gu Fei said. Really? Sword Demon seemed to be asking himself. Then he shook his head. I'll go see Yun Xiang and the others. Yun Xiang was like a heaven-defying internal affairs manager. Gu Fei, Han family young master, and the other elites were all involved in these major operations. The miscellaneous matters in the guild were all taken care of by Yun Xiang. Okay. Gu Fei nodded. What about you? I'm going down first. See you later. The two said their goodbyes and walked to the other side of the street. On the same day, the news had already spread like wildfire in the forum. It came even faster than many other reports. All the posts were in unison, clearly criticizing heaven-defying. Robber, bandit, scum, liar. Such adjectives filled the forum. It was obvious that Ing Chi's counterattack wasn't slow either. They had already sent out their gunners and started attacking heaven-defying's public opinion. In an instant, the players reacted like a tide. Some criticized heaven-defying's group for being violent, some didn't have a good impression of the studio, and some were envious of heaven-defying's ability to take away such a large amount of equipment. But overall, most players were honest, or rather, fake. They didn't approve of heaven-defying's actions. Brother Yu returned to the game and reported the news to everyone. He only got a disdainful smile from Han family young master. Isn't this expected? Mumu Duo's report, can it shut their mouths? Brother Yu asked. Why are you worried about this? Brother Yu, do you think what we did was wrong? Han family young master asked. Chapter 873. Brother Yu was clearly far from young Master Han's carefree attitude. Brother Yu felt a lot of pressure from the players' criticism on the forum, as well as the criticism directed at famous experts like him. However, when he returned to the game to look for the Han family young master, he didn't get any sympathy. He just did what he was supposed to do and didn't care about the comments on the forums. If the guild's reputation is ruined, won't it be hard for us to develop in the future? Brother Yu glanced at the sword demon as he said this. We'll have to wait and see. The Han family young master still didn't seem to care. Brother Yu looked at him, then at the sword demon, then at the others. It seemed like no one wanted to express their opinions, so he could only continue to be depressed. The boss of Age Group, Unparalleled Wonder, was extremely busy. After gathering a group of gunmen to create a storm on the forums, he also wanted to make some noise through the gaming website. However, Unparalleled Wonder rejected Fun Gaming Website's request for an interview. He already knew that Shi Xiaotian was a fake, but he had seen the ID with his own eyes. There was no mistake. This made him feel at ease. More importantly, if Unparalleled Wonder really wanted to dig out the truth of the matter, he wouldn't be willing to do so. If he traced back to the source, it was his studio that was behind all this. Thinking of this, Gai Shiying couldn't help but glare fiercely at Five Nights. Gai Shiying didn't expect that the director's failed operation would lead to such a huge consequence. At this time, Unparalleled Qiying was using his connections and looking for friends. He wanted to find a reliable media company to be his mouthpiece and speak for him. Even if he had to pay some labor fees, it didn't matter. Other than that, the Eagle Group was once again ready to set off. This time, their destination was Cloud City. However, from the leader to the members, their expressions were no longer as relaxed as when they were carrying out a mission. They knew that their opponent wasn't any weaker than them in a direct confrontation. How long would this entanglement last? No one was confident. Fortunately, Matchless Wonder did not place all his hopes on the Eagle Party. He seemed to have realized that their opponent this time would be more difficult to deal with than the 10 Guilds Alliance. Therefore, he invested a sum of money and handed it over to Forever to gather a group of fighters in the game. It doesn't have to be a professional player or a mercenary group. It's best if it's an expert with reputation and background. Find as many people as you can, Matchless Wonder instructed as he handed the money to Eternal. Yong Yong nodded silently. He couldn't help but sigh at how vicious his boss was. He wanted to spend money to drag people into this mess. Experts with prestige and background were involved in this whirlpool. If they suffered heavy losses, they might not even need Ing Chi's request to take revenge. At this time, their reputation, their background, became free weapons for Ing Chi, and in the blink of an eye, Ing Chi could extricate himself from the matter and enjoy the fruits of others' labor. I think you know what to do, don't you? Matchless Hero emphasized again, as if afraid that he would never understand. Understood. Forever nodded. His boss' words made his train of thought even clearer. These people weren't even there to win. They were there to make them lose. They were there to send them to die at the hands of 1,000 miles drunk, to die at the hands of the sword ghost, to die at the hands of Yun Zhongmu, and then wait for them to take revenge. As for the Eagle Party, their main mission was to direct this show from behind the scenes. Eternity sighed and followed Matchless Hero's orders. Even though it was vicious, Eternal had to admit that this plan was very likely to work. Forever was a veteran of the game. He was familiar with all kinds of players and knew that this type of person would be easy to find. Forever temporarily left the game and posted a hero recruitment post on the forums. The gist of it was that Ing Chi's studio had been robbed by other players and didn't have the strength to deal with them. They were asking for help from all the experts on the server, hoping that someone would come out and uphold justice. The opening was all pretty words, pretending to be pitiful and pitiful. The real killer move was at the end, Matchless Wonder's offer. Matchless Hero's offer wasn't just money, but equipment and scrolls as well. Forever listed all of these extremely tempting items in big, bold letters. He believed that when he logged into the game again, his mailbox would definitely be flooded with messages. Forever also added a request. He wanted the players to submit their name, level, equipment, and skill proficiency to prove their strength. In reality, however, Forever didn't care about their strength. When he saw an outstanding applicant, he would immediately investigate their background. This was the main point of their recruitment. For Ing Chi, who had employees all over the world, this wasn't difficult. It was just that most of the main cities didn't have someone in charge, so he often had to personally run errands. Matchless Wonder listened to Forever's report and was quite satisfied with his arrangements. At this time, he had finally found a gaming website that was willing to pay him. After preparing a red packet, Matchless Wonder was already prepared to accept an interview. At this time, the Fun Games website had already posted a draft first, announcing the entire sequence of events to the public. Matchless Wonder actually wanted to understand more details and enrich the material in his hands from different angles. However, after Ing Chi's studio rejected their interview request, the astute old reporter had already realized that something was wrong. In the game, there was competition between guilds and studios. In their news circle, wasn't there also competition between websites? Ing Chi rejected their interview request, but looking at their offensive on the forum, they clearly knew how to use public opinion. There was only one possibility. They needed a website that they trusted to report. With such a big piece of news, everyone would obviously rush to publish it first. Therefore, Fun Gaming website didn't care too much about the details. They hurriedly let Matchless Wonder organize and publish the information they had on hand, then make follow-up reports to supplement it. Matchless Wonder had no choice but to do as he was told. This report naturally set off a new wave. The press release was quickly reposted by various major forums. Players could start discussions based on this report. Compared to those messy gunner sock puppets, Matchless Wonder's name had a different weight. The opinions of many players were quickly reversed. Some immediately became very defiant supporters, while others only issued disdainful comments of dog biting dog. This time, Ing Chi's counterattack was very quick. The gunners heard the news and acted quickly. They played word games and refuted Matchless Wonder's report one by one. Among them, the most powerful was the part about Shi Xiaotian pretending to be a reporter and sneaking into Ing Chi's studio. What kind of reporter was he pretending to be? A reporter from Fun Gaming website. Now that it was Fun Gaming website that made such a report that leaned towards very defiant, the gunners seized the opportunity to crazily exaggerate this relationship. They wished they could just take a stapler and directly nail very defiant and Fun Gaming website together. Of course, Duo Mudwa wouldn't run over to debate with the players who were reading the post. Very against the heavens wouldn't be like Ing Chi and send out some gunmen. In the end, only Brother Yu put on a sock puppet and tried his best to refute a few words while reading the post. However, the gunman's firepower was powerful, and in an instant, Brother Yu was completely destroyed. He escaped into the game to take refuge. Matchless Wonders draft has been posted. When the forum was bustling, Brother Yu would always be very busy. He would often go up and down to pass on the news for fun. But what made him unhappy was that every time the gossip on the forum that made his blood boil came in, the listeners around him would always look like they were about to die. This time, Brother Yu felt that it shouldn't be like this. After all, this time was also closely related. This time was indeed different. Compared to the previous times when everyone would just say, "Oh, is that so?" and so on, this time someone finally asked, "And then?" It was very noisy. Ing Chi's gunners, that's right, they were definitely gunners. They all came over to accusing us of colluding with Fun Gaming website. Brother Yu said angrily. "Oh, this isn't completely baseless. We are indeed in cahoots." The Han family's young master said. "But it's definitely not like what they said." Brother Yu said angrily. "Brother Yu, what are you so anxious about? Is there any other news?" Han family young master asked. "No, but I see that they are trying very hard to find Shi Xiaotian. I'm thinking, will Shi Xiaotian's identity be dug out?" Brother Yu said. This. Han family young master was startled. He wanted to ask Gu Fei if Shi Xiaotian was a famous swindler. In the end, when he took a look, he saw that Gu Fei was already offline. "Let them be." The Han family's young master said. "Matchless Wonder hasn't reported that we're going to throw the equipment." Brother Yu said. Hee, big news has to come bit by bit. Don't worry, they're professionals with news skills. You're just a gossiper, so don't worry. Just watch the show. Han family young master said. Brother Yu was speechless. At this time, he wasn't in the mood to watch the show. This was a closely related matter, but the public opinion was one-sided. Matchless Wonders draft had just turned the situation around a bit, but those gunmen came over and killed them. He even got shot quite a few times. He really wanted to chop someone up. Brother Yu looked at his friend list. Gu Fei wasn't online. He was very depressed. He really wanted to follow Gu Fei to do some wanted missions. The forum continued to explode. The gunmen that Ing Chi brought over could be said to be doing their best, inciting the emotions of the players. In comparison, Against the Heavens side was a bit lacking. There wasn't a single person involved who came out to refute. Other unrelated people, even if they wanted to speak, they couldn't raise their voices. This commotion wasn't a scolding battle at all, because one of the sides had actually never gone on stage. And at this time, another heavy bomb was dropped. The boss of Ing Chi's studio, the game ID Unparalleled Wonder, personally accepted a joint interview from 52 Gaming Network's Watcher Inada and Jiao Gaming Network's Uncle Mutong. The two websites had already published the interview draft. Compared to Fun Gaming Network's report, 52 Gaming Network and Jiao Gaming Network's report pushed the hatred between Against the Heavens and Ing Chi's studio a lot further, all the way to the negotiation between Five Nights and Qianli Drunk and the others about the efficient leveling method. In the two websites' descriptions, Five Nights was a sincere businessman. He repeatedly gave in to the harsh conditions proposed by Qianli Drunk and the others. He only wanted to make this cooperation happen. But in the end, because of some unacceptable conditions, the negotiations didn't succeed. Then, Qianli Drunk revealed his ferocious nature and killed Ingqi director 5 nights after the negotiations broke down. As for the Fun Games website, it was reported that Director 5 Nights had secretly organized Cloud Cities guilds to destroy an extremely heaven-defying action. However, in this report, there was a different explanation. The kind-hearted Director 5 Nights wanted to cooperate with Against the Heavens regarding the city's business, but because of the previous incident where Qianli Drunk killed him, he found some Cloud City players to accompany him. He also wanted to borrow the fame of the large number of players in Cloud City. In the end, Against the Heavens was extremely arrogant. Not only was he unwilling to cooperate, he even caused a calamity in Cloud City. This calamity directly caused the average level of the players in Cloud City to drop by 0.47. Countless people lost their treasured equipment, and the flames of war even spread to Moonlit Night City. At this point, the reporter was moved to broadcast Unparalleled Wonder's regret for the dissolution of the 10 Guild Alliance in Moonlit Night City. He encouraged the players of the 10 Guild Alliance not to give up because of the betrayal of their former leader, Yun Zhongmu. If everyone worked together, they would eventually be able to restore the glory of the 10 Guild Alliance. This time, it was also a report from the official media, and it was from 2 different media outlets. They were both famous reporters in the online gaming world, and it was 2 of them. Although they were not as famous as Mudo Mudo, with the addition of 2, the sense of reality increased. He had already been one-sidedly suppressed, and was even despised on the forum as if he was worse than a pig or a dog. Brother Yu was about to vomit blood when he saw the post. He scolded, "Shameless scum," and reconnected to the game. Once again, he was filled with righteous indignation. This time, the reaction was a little bigger. Zhan Wushang and Imperial Sky God Ming finally followed suit and scolded him for being shameless. White can be called black. These 2 must have been bribed by Ingqi. There are so many players involved in this incident, I don't believe they can all be bribed. Brother Yu believed in justice. They don't need to be bribed. Han family young master calmly said. What? Brother Yu didn't understand. Shepherd Cloud Guild, Black Underworld Alliance. Do you really expect these people, who were tortured by Qianli and then extorted a huge sum of money, to speak for us? Young Master Han asked. Brother Yu was flabbergasted. Are they going to be shameless too? Everyone is shameless. I don't think so, but those who are interviewed will definitely be shameless. Those who aren't shameless won't have any weight. Han family young master said. What should we do? Brother Yu was a bit panicked. What should we do? Didn't we already agree? Han family young master said. What? Throw the equipment. Han family young master calmly said, I don't think we need to wait for so many reports. Since you like to go to the forums so much, you can go and make a post. How should I write it? Brother Yu said. Ingqi Studio's despicable, obscene, and dirty methods have harmed players. We've looted a bunch of blood and sweat from Ingqi's storage, and now we're giving it back to the players of Cloud and Night City who were harmed by Ingqi's despicable, obscene, and dirty methods. Everyone come online early tomorrow, we're going to throw out some equipment. Whoever picks it up gets it. Everyone, come and try your luck. Han family's young master said. Is this, okay? Brother Yu muttered. That's the main idea. You do as you see fit. Han family young master said. It's decided. Tomorrow? Brother Yu said. Tomorrow then. Han family young master said. Brother Yu went. This time it wasn't an official media, so there weren't many people following up. A simple post, but it became the biggest bomb of the day. Compared to this, what were the messy gossips between the 2 families worth? It was just something for the board players, and in reality, it had nothing to do with many people. But now, there were real benefits to be gained, so what was the point of gossiping? All of the posts were instantly ignored, and everyone gathered under the post. Some questioned the authenticity of the post, some asked what was in it, some asked about the time and location. Some even said, "Students at the back, don't reply anymore, it's too late." Their intentions didn't need to be explained. No matter what, this post definitely wouldn't go down. The posts related to this post even flooded the entire forum. Most of the posts were doubting the authenticity of this post. Whether it's true or not, we'll find out tomorrow. A player replied. "Which city are you from?" Someone asked. "Cloud City." "Fuck, I'm from Itai City." "Damn it, I'm not chatting anymore, I'm going back to the game." That night, it created the highest number of people online in the morning in the parallel world, surpassing the number of online players during the City War event. The game officials were embarrassed. It turned out that it was so easy to create a game online record. The game officials had been following up on this matter, but how should they judge it? Would the game officials have to deal with it? The debate within the game officials was much more intense than on the forum. There wasn't a fight on the forum, because one side didn't care about the other. Compared to this, don't we have something more important to do? A staff member suddenly said. "What is it?" "If all the players from the parallel world are gathered in one or two main cities, how can the server handle it?" Everyone was stunned when they heard this. No one knew better than them that the parallel world was said to be a single server for the entire world, but in reality, it was also operated by multiple servers in parallel. A main city was usually hosted by a single server, and switching to a main city was equivalent to crossing servers. But now, if all the players from the parallel world were to be gathered in one server, it would definitely not be able to handle it. Either the server would crash, or the cards that had disappeared from online games for God knows how many years would reappear. Chapter 874. Can these people stop causing trouble for us? All the employees of the Parallel World Company were crying, especially the technical department. After solving the technical problem of the overcrowded Cloud City's dungeon, another group of heaven-defying people created an even bigger technical problem. This made the employees of the parallel world deeply feel how difficult it was to earn a living just by doing a job. Inform everyone to wake up and come work overtime. That night, the phones of all the employees in the game company exploded with calls. The extremely overpowered names were well known, and every employee knew how amazing they were. Many employees were woken up from their sleep, and when faced with their children's question, "Dad, what are you doing so late at night?" they would answer in a daze, "Extremely overpowered." How will we deal with this? The lower-level employees were discussing. At this time, the online players in the game had already started to swarm towards Cloud City and Moonlit Night City, while the higher-ups were still discussing how to deal with this matter. It was a tragedy, as the discussion on the forums was the busiest period of the day, so the news spread far and wide. Therefore, the players who knew about this didn't go offline that night, and they started to hurry up. The decision-makers came up with a plan very quickly. First, they firmly rejected the idea of contacting the extremely overpowered players again and negotiating with them to solve the problem. If the game company kept compromising with the players, and not the majority, but a very small amount, where would their dignity be? This time, we must use technology to solve this problem. The big boss hammered out a general plan. Solve it with technology and combine it with reality. It's actually not too difficult. At this time, a strategist started to suggest a plan. He controlled the projector, and a huge map appeared on the screen. Of course, everyone knew that this was the full map of the parallel world. "Everyone, please look, Cloud City and Moonlit Night City are in the southwest corner of the parallel world." Based on the distance between the two cities, in just one night, almost 85% of the players in the main cities won't be able to reach Cloud City and Moonlit Night City by foot, and these 85% of the players can only use teleportation scrolls. "I think we should first control the teleportation scrolls from a technical point of view, and the majority of the players will be controlled," the strategist analyzed. "Lock down all the teleportation scrolls?" someone asked. "Maybe we can do it more tactfully, for example, temporarily block the teleportation of mail," the strategist said. "Mail delivery?" Think Tank gestured confidently on the map and said, if the other main cities want to teleport to the fixed point of Cloud Moon City, the scroll in their hands must have the coordinates of these two cities. Think about it, if the players from other cities want to have the coordinates of these two cities, they have to at least send the scroll in their hands to their friends to help them make the coordinates, or buy the coordinates scroll from the merchants and studios of Cloud Moon City. So, by locking the mail, it's equivalent to controlling their movements to go to the Cloud and Moonlight cities. That's right. Those who didn't understand immediately understood. That's it. Lock the email immediately and make up a reason. Let's do it now. The boss made the decision immediately. A lot of time had passed from the moment he saw the excitement on the forums to the moment the news broke out. Then, he discovered that the players had started moving towards these two cities without logging off. Finally, he gathered his people to discuss a solution. According to the data from the monitoring team, the number of people in Cloud and Moonlit Night cities had begun to increase. Obviously, it was impossible to walk to Cloud Moon City from the main cities that were too far away. The players also knew such a simple logic. So, the players who came from far away thought of the idea of teleportation scrolls. Those who had ready-made scrolls were basically ready to go. Those who didn't had ready-made scrolls were looking for ways to buy them. The most depressed were those who didn't have money. They were asking their friends to raise funds. One scroll could teleport 4 people, so each person had a quarter, which would reduce the burden a lot. No matter what, the peak of players in Cloud Moon City and Moonlight Night cities is unavoidable. I think these two main cities should quickly load the servers to reduce the load. Think Tank suggested. Do you have backup servers? The boss asked. Yes, someone answered. How long do you need? The boss asked. If everything goes well, half an hour. But the connection must be cut in half an hour, the person in charge of this area answered. I think. Another person said, as the number of people increases, the server can't handle it. There will be delays, and the players will also feel it. At this time, we will take the opportunity to cut the connection and announce the real reason. It will be solved in half an hour. The players will definitely understand. Okay. The boss nodded. Then how many servers should each city load? How many backup servers? The boss asked. 20, the answer was. Why so few? The boss frowned. This is to deal with temporary problems. I didn't think we would need to deal with this sudden situation. This kind of thing changes quickly, so we intentionally controlled the number from the beginning. This is what you signed, the subordinate reminded. 20 servers is enough. Currently, the number of players in each main city is still a long way from full capacity. If it wasn't for these guys causing trouble all over the world and only 2 or 3 main cities, we wouldn't even need to do this. Just in case, use all 10 servers in each city, the boss said. Understood. Are there any other questions? The boss asked. Regarding this dispute, what position should we take? Someone asked the boss. Continue to provide services. Don't get caught up in it when there is no topic pointing at us. The boss seemed to have thought it through. The Parallel World Game Company was also very efficient. The higher-ups held a meeting while making decisions. When the meeting ended, the work of locking down the mail was completed. The announcement on the official website didn't mention anything about this incident at all. It only said that the data was a bit abnormal and suspected to be a Trojan horse attack. The mail service would be suspended, and the items, letters, and money in the mail would be completely preserved. This announcement didn't attract the attention of the players at first. It wasn't until a large number of players who were dealing with teleportation scrolls went through this part of the transaction that they realized there was nothing in their mailbox. It was just a mail sent by the system. When they went to the official website to take a look, they realized that this announcement was exactly the same as the mail in the game. Everyone was in an uproar. Although the officials didn't make a clear statement, there was no doubt that the sudden detection of the mail malfunction at this time made the players who finally had the conditions to go to Moon and Cloud City furious. In an instant, there was a new target on the forum. The boss even said, "Don't get caught up in it when there is no topic pointing at us," but as soon as the mail was locked, it was immediately attacked. Everyone in the game company didn't expect that the busiest department of the night was the customer service department. The phones were ringing non-stop, emails were received non-stop, and the forum was flooded with complaints. Isn't there a problem with locking the mail? Some people were already feeling guilty. The think tank who came up with this idea was sweating profusely. He had underestimated the awareness of the players. Even if the players didn't think of the purpose of this move, as long as this happened and blocked everyone's path to wealth, no matter what the players' true purpose was, they would still come to trample on you. The customer service manager was glaring at him. It was said that there were already 4 customer service girls who were scolded to tears by the players. "Crazy, they're all crazy," someone said in a daze. At this time, the first group of players who were migrating on foot had reached the destination. From the map, it could be seen that Cloud City was closer to the corner than Moonlit City. For people in the world, Moonlit City was the closer choice. In fact, many main cities wanted to go to Cloud City, and Moonlit City would become a transit point. At this time, Moonlit City was a step ahead of Cloud City, and there were even more players who didn't plan to continue. Moonlit City's city area and outside the city were filled with people. The network lag that had been extinct in online games for many years had finally appeared. Moreover, in the holographic mode, the players had a whole new experience. Every player had mastered teleportation, and the scene in front of them was always reincarnating. The words that they had just said were actually heard again in the next second. Where did the sound come from? No idea. Amidst the panic, the system announcement appeared without delay: "The server is overloaded and will stop working soon. Players, please pay attention to the official homepage." 10 seconds later, the Moonlit City players were all cut off from the internet. Everyone rushed to the homepage and saw the announcement that the game company had prepared. This announcement didn't cause too much commotion. The players could understand the real reason. More importantly, the game company promised to solve the problem within half an hour, which made the players feel at ease. Reality proved that the game company in the parallel world was quite honest when it came to operations. The native players of Moonlit City were the most displeased. According to their knowledge, they were a guild from Cloud City, and they were the ones who had caused this to happen. Yet, in the end, Moonlit City had been disconnected. What was going on? The temporary shutdown of the server didn't cause a huge uproar, but the mailbox problem still needed to be solved. The announcement had been out for more than an hour, but there were still players complaining and cursing. 3 girls from the customer service department ran to the washroom in tears. Another announcement: mailbox monitoring is also to be responsible for the players. If the data is damaged, it's the players' interests that are lost. That's why the mailbox is locked. The secretary immediately recorded the boss's instructions. Of course, the boss meant what he said. The official announcement still needed to be polished. Polite words like, "Players, please understand," and "not having a mailbox does not affect the game. Have fun playing," still needed to be said. After this announcement, the players quieted down a little. Many players who had calmed down began to ask how long it would take to solve the problem, hoping for a clear answer. Therefore, the game company replied that because it was an external attack, they couldn't estimate the time and asked everyone to pay attention to the latest announcement. Everything was just like the saying, telling a lie requires countless lies to cover it up. The game company found an excuse to lock the mailbox, and now they had no choice but to continue lying to patch it up. More importantly, with so many players being so aggressive, it seemed like they couldn't keep using this mailbox lock. It was better to find another way. Once again, the higher-ups sat together nervously. Among the players who were denouncing the mailbox incident, there was no lack of forever comrades. He had to rely on the mailbox to contact his subordinates. He was planning to deal with all the mail once it piled up, but he didn't expect to receive a system mail like this when he arrived. He was furious. Then, he realized that with the mailbox locked, they couldn't go to Cloud Peak or Moonlit Night City. They didn't have teleportation scrolls with the coordinates of the two cities. Although the studio had them, the mail was blocked, so they couldn't send them over. The news that they were going to dump their equipment was also known by now. Matchless Genius was furious. He didn't expect these guys to be so calm. There were so many equipment scrolls, and they weren't tempted at all. Perhaps each of them kept some for themselves, but they were willing to give up most of it. This was undoubtedly a smart move. This move easily shut the mouths of the players. No one cared about who was right and who was wrong in this fight between against Matchless and Matchless. What was worse was that this move couldn't be replicated by Matchless Genius. Although they had more resources on hand, the equipment that Matchless Genius threw away belonged to them, so they were the ones who felt bad. Now that they were throwing it away, would they continue to feel bad? What's more, what was the point of this? Just by throwing it away, they would be able to kill against Matchless Genius? Not only was there no reason for Matchless Genius to throw it away, but it also proved that he was an idiot. Shameless. Too shameless. Matchless Genius clenched his teeth in anger and messaged Forever, "Immediately go to Cloud City. If you see against Matchless Genius, kill him." "I can't go." Forever replied miserably. "Why?" "My mailbox is locked, I can't get a teleportation scroll." Forever replied. Matchless Genius couldn't even curse anymore. He felt like he was really unlucky. Why did so many things have to happen at the same time? "How's it going with the people I asked you to bring?" Matchless Genius asked. "My mailbox is locked." "Do I have to use my mailbox for this?" "Can't you change your contact details?" "Go and leave your ID on the announcement and open your friends list." "If that doesn't work, leave your phone number, your QQ, and your email." "Don't you know how to do that?" Matchless Genius roared. In fact, ever since he hired the Eagle Party as his personal guard, he had never spoken so rudely to the players. This time, he was angry, truly angry. Forever was tactful and replied, "I'll get it done," before disappearing. Fuck, why is it like this? Matchless Genius felt like things were going too far from what he had planned. He didn't know if he could turn things around. At this time, Cloud City, with Moonlit City acting as their cover, was very peaceful. Aside from the obvious increase in the number of players in the wilderness on the streets. These players had teleported to Cloud City before their mailboxes were locked. Their numbers weren't enough to cause congestion in Cloud City, but it was obvious that there was an increase in the number of people. This was different from a siege war where players would gather in one place. These players were moving around freely like normal people, making Cloud City look very lively. It was very heaven-defying, and he was quite busy at the moment. Countless players were trying to contact them and find out what was going to happen tomorrow. These players had traveled thousands of miles to come here, and if they returned empty-handed, they would lose face. They had to at least get something. This was especially true for those OP players who felt that they had the upper hand at this moment. However, it was a pity that this operation was extremely heaven-defying. Only the core members of the guild were participating. Apart from them, the rest were Cloud Twilight's subordinates. Although the others knew about this, they weren't much different from other players. They were even thinking of coming out early the next day to pick up the loot. As members of their own guild, they were treated like this. It was hard to bear. However, the guild's internal department had already digested this problem. Yesterday, Sword Ghost had gone to find Yun Xiang and dealt with this problem. Otherwise, the guild members wouldn't have been able to explain the entire plan at all. It was a little sad. After knowing the whole story, the very strong players didn't have any more objections and continued doing what they were doing. However, it was troublesome to have friends come to ask. If they said they didn't know, they wouldn't believe them. In the end, everyone was a bit embarrassed. However, everyone was mentally prepared for this situation. They had a clear conscience. It's a lot livelier. Han family young master stood at the entrance of the tavern, feeling quite depressed. He wasn't afraid of the liveliness. What annoyed him was that there were so many people that the tavern was full. This was already the 7th tavern he went to, and it was still full of people. From this point, Han family young master regretted making this plan. That's good. Moonlit City has already stopped connecting because there are too many people. Brother, you said. It seems like everyone is paying attention to our operation this time. Han family young master said. But the things we have, I'm afraid we can't satisfy so many people, right? Brother, you said. Of course. Compared to so many players, this amount of resources is too small. Han family young master said. How much do we have? Did Yunting tell us? About 1/15 of the resources of Ing Chi's studio. Han family young master said. That's a lot. Brother Yu's eyes widened. At that time, they couldn't even move half of the warehouse. He didn't think that they would have 1/15 of the resources. It seemed like when Unparalleled Wonder was interviewed by Shi Xiaotian, he didn't say much about the resources. Hey, where are you going? After Brother Yu said this, he realized that Han family young master had already disappeared. He turned around and saw that he had left without a word. Seeing everyone's passion, I'm touched. I've decided to go offline and rest. I'll come back early tomorrow to deliver the goods. Han family young master waved his hand without turning back. Is that so? Isn't it because there's no place to drink? Brother Yu muttered. Chapter 875. Compared to the nervous staff, the culprits who created this tense situation had no awareness at all. Gu Fei and Han family young master had already logged off one after the other. The rest of the people did what they had to do and were still living comfortably. Seeing how the main city had become so lively because of their piece of news, they all felt that it was quite interesting. The only annoying thing was that everyone was being harassed to varying degrees by their friends. For example, Sword of No Oath, of course, it was inevitable that he would come over and try to get something out of it. But from Sword Demon's serious attitude, he really couldn't get anything out of it. As for the others, even core members like Yutian Shinming and Unscathed in Battle, even if they wanted to say something, how could they know what Han family young master was planning to do tomorrow? At that moment, Brother Yu finally understood that going offline tonight was definitely a very smart decision. As the core member with the weakest deterrent force and the one known for gossiping, he received the most harassment. Brother Yu couldn't take it anymore, and in the end, he also decisively chose to log off. Very overpowered players gradually embarked on this path, which made the staff who paid special attention to them very frustrated. Many of them were even dragged out of their beds to work overtime. But this group of shameless culprits actually logged off early tonight to rest. Apart from this group of shameless people, this night was really long for too many people. The second day. To be honest, it was really hard to define the second day. In the announcement that Brother Yu made, the time used was tomorrow. Many players treated the second day as coming after midnight, afraid that they would be very overpowered and rush to throw things early in the morning. At this time, many players hadn't completed their migration work, and the very overpowered players hadn't completely logged off. In the two cities of Cloud and Moonlight, there were already players walking around the streets paying attention to environmental protection. Once they saw someone throw something, they would excitedly pounce on it. Then, when they found out that it was really a pile of trash, there was no need to mention how disappointing it was. Speaking of the forum notice, the players were quite depressed. The time was vague, and the location was not accurate either. Cloud and Moonlight, two cities, was it Cloud or Moonlight? Countless players were struggling to make a decision that night. Some people thought that since Cloud Sky was the home of these people, Cloud Sky would be the first to start. Others thought that Cloud Sky would do the exact opposite and throw Moonlit Night before returning home. Either way, after Moonlit Night City's servers were restored, Cloud Sky and Moonlit Night City began to interact with each other. That night, the meandering Dark Dragon Mountain Range was as lively as any main city's busiest street. Some players who liked to seize any opportunity to do business even went to the edge of a cliff. Cloud City didn't disappoint either. After Moonlit City, it was also disconnected due to the network delay, but it was restored after half an hour. Everything was normal. When the sun was about to rise, the mail system was finally restored due to the persistent complaints and curses of the players. However, in the announcement, the officials solemnly pointed out that the crisis was not over. Due to the repeated requests of the players, the mail system was temporarily restored. However, the investigation of the loopholes was not over yet. With the circulation of mail, the difficulty and efficiency of the investigation would decrease, and there might be a delay in the delivery of mail. This message was very subtle. After Moonlit Night City and Cloud Sky were overcrowded, the smart players had already guessed the true intention of the officials to suspend the mail system. At this time, when this message came out, many people were already aware that if they sent teleportation scrolls, they would be delayed. However, when they continued to try, they realized that they couldn't get their hands on teleportation scrolls anymore. Players didn't have many teleportation scrolls in their hands. Studios would deliberately hoard these things, and during special times, these things would have special value. For example, tonight, when the teleportation scrolls were hyped up, many studios had already raised their swords high, ready to cut down the players' heads and faces. However, they didn't expect that the game company would actually make a move on them. Powerful studios were all well known in the game company. Tonight, they were all contacted by the game company, and the content was the same. They hoped that they would cooperate and control the trade of teleportation scrolls tonight. The reason was also the truth. The game company said it politely, and the studios also fully understood their intentions. The so-called control of the trade, of course, was best to directly suspend the trade. Although the development of the studio's industry was booming, it wasn't yet the time to twist the thigh of the game company. Moreover, the game company obviously regarded their players as God, and at this time, they unscrupulously chose to sacrifice the interests of their studios. The bosses of the studios could only swallow their anger and arrange for the trade of teleportation scrolls to be suspended. Since it was the intention of the game company, it was possible that these guys had already monitored every teleportation scroll. In this world, when it was said that heaven knows, earth knows, you know, and I know, one must understand that there really was heaven and earth. The game system was this heaven and earth, and as long as it was willing, it could know everything. No studios dared to take the risk. They all kept their teleportation scrolls well, so after the mail system was restored, it became a common phenomenon that they couldn't find teleportation scrolls. In fact, according to the data some staff had, after the parallel operation of 11 servers in Cloud City and Moonlit Night City, even if all the teleportation scrolls in the game were fully loaded and sent to these two cities, the servers of the two cities would still be able to withstand it. Even so, the final decision was to limit the number of teleportation scrolls. The reason was that the staff in charge of the calculation later discovered that although there was no problem with the servers, there was a big problem with the size of the main cities. If all the above teleportation was completed, with a considerable number of players migrating on foot, and with everyone gathering in the main cities of Cloud City and Moonlit Night City would not be able to accommodate such a large number of people. It was simply an enlarged version of the previous dungeon problem, although this time it wouldn't cause any data collapse. If that's the case, isn't it unnecessary to have 11 servers in parallel in a main city? Someone questioned. Just in case, there's more servers to ensure the quality. Someone said. But, no buts, it's the boss's intention to use all 10 servers. Therefore, the person who said, but, immediately shut up. What's the situation in the two cities now? The big boss of the parallel world sat in his office, looking at the white sky outside the window and asking his subordinates. He didn't rest much that night, and could be considered a very dedicated boss. This matter wasn't too big of a deal, and it didn't really require him, the highest decision-maker, to personally command the situation. The situation of the network in the two cities is stable, and the emotions of the players are also relatively stable, the subordinate reported. What about the very overpowered people? The guild that could be remembered by the big boss of the game company was very overpowered, and it was already making history. They are all offline. At this time, the subordinate held back his tears. He was one of the people who was very dissatisfied with the overpowered people who created big trouble and then lived happily in the world. These troublesome people. The big boss sighed. Delete them. The subordinate couldn't help but say. Of course, the big boss knew that he was just being impulsive and joking, so he just laughed it off. He turned back and looked outside the window. It's morning. It's probably time for those guys to come online. The subordinate's tone was that of a bear coming out of its cave. Another lively day. The big boss sighed. Did the overpowered people come online? The answer was no. Although they went offline earlier than usual, it was still after midnight. How could they come online at dawn? However, many of the players who stayed up all night couldn't take it anymore, and the studios that stayed up all night were also very tired. The players went offline, afraid that all their hard work would go to waste. The workers had already solved the problem and could rest, but they couldn't bear to miss this scene. Everyone was thinking, bastard, when are we going to come online? The overpowered people didn't come online, but the core members of the overpowered people were discussing how to start throwing equipment today. Communication was everywhere, and it didn't have to be in the game. The direction of the forum has completely changed. No one mentioned anything about us and Ingqi's studio for the entire night. They were all talking about us throwing equipment. Brother Yu was very happy. Only now did he realize how sharp the Han family young master's move was. The one who was more depressed about this was Mudo Mudo. They wanted to slowly release this more eye-catching topic, but in the end, it was exposed by the overpowered people. What are we going to do today? Brother Yu asked. Throw equipment in both cities at once. Old Yun, you can bring some people over to Moonlit Night City. You guys are more familiar with it. Han family young master said. No problem. Yun Zhongmu nodded. Leave Cloud City to us. We'll do it at the same time. We'll throw equipment once an hour. There's no need to make an announcement. We'll let the players discover the pattern. 25 people from each city will throw one item at a time. I did a rough calculation. It'll start at noon, and it'll be lively until the peak at night. When it's the peak, we'll throw out everything we have. Han family young master said. Why don't we throw it all at once? Someone asked. If we throw it too quickly, some people will feel like we didn't throw it at all. If we continue for a bit longer, then people will know that this has been going on for a long time. When we're done, we'll make an announcement on the forums. Han family young master said. Ingqi's people will probably cause trouble, right? Brother Yu was worried. Cause trouble? How can he cause trouble? But remember, the people in charge of throwing equipment shouldn't wear their guild badges. It's best if they cover their faces. We can't rule out the possibility that some people will kill us and steal our equipment. Han family young master said. I'm just worried that Ingqi will send people to do the same. Brother Yu said. Even I don't know where to throw the equipment. Do you think Ingqi's people will know? Han family young master said. What if? Why don't you worry about people killing us and stealing our equipment? How about it, do you still have the guts to throw it? Han family young master asked. Fuck, of course I do. It was necessary to be stubborn, but after saying this, Brother Yu still felt a bit guilty. In the end, there was still Yutian Shinming's unreliable consolation, don't worry Brother Yu. Even if you die, the equipment might not drop. Even if it does, you've achieved your goal of throwing equipment. Brother Yu cried for a long time before he came back to his senses and said, I think the official announcement on the mail system seems to be a restriction on us. Han family young master easily saw through this problem. If the mail is controlled, then the players in faraway city won't be able to get teleportation scrolls. Therefore, the number of people will be effectively controlled. That's good. If there are so many people that we can't even move, then what's the point of doing anything? Unscathed in Battle said. Then, everyone discussed some small details. Then, they shamelessly went back to sleep and waited for the afternoon to officially start work. The people who had stayed up all night had to suffer through another morning. Persevere, persevere, they kept telling themselves. It was already noon, wasn't this considered tomorrow? Extremely overpowered people can't be too shameless. Extremely overpowered people finally heard the cries of the crowd. Compared to most of the players in the game who didn't know anything, the game company suddenly became alert. This was because the news instantly spread, extremely overpowered people are online together. What are they going to do? Everyone was already crowded in the monitoring room, but the monitoring room wasn't that big. In order to deal with this situation, they had to ask their boss for permission to do a live broadcast of the monitoring. This monitoring could be seen by any computer that was connected to the company's intranet. Even the company's higher-ups were sitting in the conference room and looking at the huge LCD screen. In the game, the first to know were obviously the players who had online friends. They all chose to stay silent. At this time, the two main cities in Cloud Moon and Night Cloud couldn't be any more crowded. Everyone knew the reason why there were so many people, so everyone around them looked like competitors. After a night of purging, the players in the two main cities had basically eliminated the bad habit of littering. Wasn't littering confusing the public at such a sensitive time? Moreover, it was the public opinion of the entire city. There was no room for discussion. Extremely overpowered players who came online at the various revival points sneakily removed their badges, masked their faces, and blended into the crowd. Then, they moved towards the guild's stronghold. This stronghold had never been exposed, otherwise, it would have been guarded by all the players. Everyone arrived one by one, smoothly arriving one by one and entering the house to collect the goods. After that, it was completely up to their own will as to where to throw the equipment. What if someone took something and couldn't bear to throw it away? Han family young master had already thought about this. The distribution of resources was very particular. For people like Sword Demon, he could do as he pleased. For people like Yutian Shinming and Scathed in Battle, who were extremely suspicious, they didn't even have the right to get equipment to throw. They could only throw scrolls, which were definitely not of their own class. Moreover, the two of them might even form a gang to commit crimes. As a result, Yutian Shinming couldn't even get warrior items from Unscathed in Battle. Similarly, Unscathed in Battle couldn't get archer items either. And no one else knew what each person took. If they tried to find out, they would become the target of suspicion. In this regard, Drifting's treatment was the same as Yutian Shinming Unscathed in Battle. Yutian Shinming's promotion couldn't be ignored for him to receive this kind of treatment. When this guy realized that something was wrong, he immediately shouted. Moreover, he never hid his disdain and suspicion for Drifting in his heart. Under everyone's gaze, Drifting had to show that he didn't care. Therefore, Han family young master smiled and indifferently gave him the same treatment. Brother Yu and the others muttered to themselves. They thought that Han family young master might have already expected this. He guessed that Yutian Shinming would definitely cause trouble for Drifting, so he took the opportunity to suppress Drifting as well. Everyone received their items and immediately prepared to leave. Han family young master originally wanted to contact Nitrite Radical to replenish a batch of teleportation scrolls, but in the end, he received news that they were out of stock. This surprised Han family young master. If they were out of stock, he believed that he had bought them out. Then, Nitrite Radical must have told him when the stock was out. Was it because of this incident that they were suddenly out of stock? But because of the problem with the mailbox, the trading volume of teleportation scrolls should be limited. Because of this, Han family young master and Nitrite Radical continued their conversation without leaving any evidence. More or less, Nitrite Radical replied. More or less, Han family young master muttered these three words and more or less understood. Then, they could only search for all the scrolls they had and give them to everyone in case of emergencies. However, the most obvious problem was that Yun Zhongmu and the others couldn't directly fly to Moonlit Night City. You guys throw them first. We'll hurry over, Yun Zhongmu said. Let's wait together. You guys can go now, Han family young master said. The time to throw the equipment had to be pushed back. Yun Zhongmu and the others had a smooth journey to Moonlit Night City. The moment they stepped through the city gates, they immediately sent a message to the people in Cloud City. Okay, now check your watch, Han family young master said. Come on, you. The crowd jeered. Go find a place for yourselves. We'll throw them out in 15 minutes. With this message, the equipment throwing operation officially began. Although everyone wanted to throw the equipment in a secluded place for the players to search for, the system didn't give them the chance to play this game. In the end, they could only walk to the streets and catch people off guard. 15 minutes countdown begins. 10, 9, 8, 3, 2, 1, throw. Ah! Cries of surprise followed the word, throw. In the next second, all 50 locations in Cloud City and Moonlit Night City exploded. Everyone had their own preferences. Some threw them into the sky, some threw them on the ground, and some pretended to crouch down and quietly put them on the ground. But no matter what, in front of so many eyes, not a single item was thrown without being noticed. However, after this happened, 3 players immediately slapped themselves in the face. The other party threw the equipment mysteriously. Originally, they could have been the only ones to notice, but the 3 of them all cried out in surprise like idiots. As a result, they were instantly drowned out by the crowd. Chapter 876. Before throwing, make sure you know your escape route. This was emphasized by Han family young master. With this guy's dark side, he naturally tried his best to figure out other people's thoughts in the dark. In his mind, it was inevitable for people to surround and kill the person who threw the equipment. Therefore, equipment throwing was actually a high-risk activity. He did not participate in it himself. At this time, he was sitting in Little Ray's bar and drinking very comfortably. Around him was a crowd that was eyeing him covetously. In Cloud City, who didn't know that this Han family young master was a very overpowered character? Now that he was very overpowered and was holding an equipment throwing activity, if this guy sat in the bar, the equipment would probably drop from him. Han family young master's face was too recognizable. Moreover, it was not convenient for him to cover his face. Wasn't he drinking? Han family young master had very strict requirements when it came to drinking. Drinking with his face covered was really too unpleasant. Those who waited patiently for Han family young master to throw equipment were honest people. Of course, there were also people with bad intentions. At this time, they carefully looked around and confirmed that there were no strong combatants such as Qianli, Drunk, Sword Demon, and so on. With their faces covered, they made up their minds and wanted to blow up this Han family young master. It was understandable for these guys to have such thoughts. Nowadays, overpowered players were all moving treasures in the eyes of everyone. After killing them, they were afraid that they wouldn't drop anything. As long as they dropped something, it would definitely be something good. Under such temptation, finally, someone walked on the path of making a mistake. These guys with evil intentions quickly found the same look in the eyes of the crowd. They could communicate with each other very well. When they saw that there were also people who planned to do the same, they didn't think too much and rushed out quickly. Han family young master was a cleric. In their eyes, such a guy with no combat ability was a big fat sheep. Whoever was late would not be able to eat him. Just when these guys were about to squeeze out of the crowd, suddenly, Han family young master spread his hands in the air and shouted, "Coming!" Ah! The crowd erupted. When the Han family young master threw the item, it flew in all directions. The item was very small and flew very fast. In the blink of an eye, it fell into the crowd. However, many people had already seen where the item landed and immediately rushed towards the nearest direction. "What did you throw?" I don't know, it looks like a ring. I think it's a badge. I don't care. Snatch it. The crowd was in chaos. The masked men were squeezed by the players and couldn't move an inch. They suddenly realized that they were in the center of the crowd. It seemed that no matter which direction, the crowd was converging towards them, that fellow. Before they were drowned, they looked towards the seat where the Han family young master was sitting and saw an extremely sinister smile. With a flash of white light, the man disappeared with a teleportation scroll. He did it on purpose. He had seen through it long ago. By the time he realized this, it was already too late. In the surging crowd, there were you and me, but there was no equipment. Everyone stared at their feet. Finally, someone's eyes lit up and he bent down to pick it up. The others saw the clue and hurriedly tried to stop him. The person fell to the ground, but the moment he fell, he managed to pick up the item. Then, he spat out a mouthful of blood. Fuck, it's a wine bottle cap. TSK. The crowd laughed and let him go, continuing to look for their feet. Wine bottle cap, it's another wine bottle cap. Why is it always a wine bottle cap? At first, the players who picked up the wine bottle cap didn't think too much about it. This was a pub. Wasn't it normal to have a wine bottle cap on the ground? They could only blame themselves for being too observant. However, after picking up the wine bottle cap from the place where the Han family young master threw the item, someone finally came to a realization. Fuck, did that bastard throw a wine bottle cap? When they turned back, the person at the table was already gone. However, a sharp-eyed player shouted, "Ah, it's there." Everyone looked in the direction of the voice and saw that there was a piece of paper under the wine glass at the table where the Han family young master had been sitting. Everyone thought that it was a mutated magic scroll, and they rushed forward to snatch it. The player who was lucky enough to get the paper also spat out a mouthful of blood under everyone's gazes. Fuck, it's a message. Then, he read it aloud, "Don't bother me. I don't have any equipment." Some people didn't believe him, but this person generously passed the paper around to everyone. Naturally, whoever read it vomited blood. At the same time, the news of equipment being thrown in other places in the city came. The people in a pub all slapped themselves when they heard the news. Fuck, I miscalculated. There was one item in each of the 25 places, so the competition was naturally more intense than the one in Little Ray's bar. The scene was chaotic, but the players who threw the items were all prepared and escaped unscathed. However, the process was still thrilling. 18 people were targeted, and 8 of them got away successfully. The other 10 had different degrees of crossfire with the other party. Fortunately, they were able to escape in the end. One of the important reasons was that the people who did this didn't belong to any organization, so after they locked on to their target, they didn't say anything for fear of being discovered. This situation was advantageous for them to escape in the chaotic situation. Of the 10 people who exchanged crossfire, 6 escaped in the chaos, and the other 4 killed the guy who had bad intentions on the spot. What happened in Moonlit Night City was basically the same as in Cloud City. The only difference was that there wasn't such a teasing guy in the pub. After completing the first item throwing quest, the people quickly hid after escaping, and summarized the experience and lessons learned from the first time. A total of 7 people still had lingering fear in their hearts. They survived in a thrilling way, and the rest also realized that the risk of mixing in the crowd and throwing items was indeed greater than they thought. They had to think of another way next time. By the time they escaped, the players had already picked up the items they had tossed out. For 50 items, many players who were lucky enough to get their hands on them lost their lives. However, looking at the value of these items, most players who lost their lives felt that it was worth it. Some gossipers quickly showed off their luck to their friends, and the news spread quickly. Soon, even the forums were posted. However, the players who posted only heard about this item, and then it disappeared in the blink of an eye. They were still in a hurry to go back to the game to pick up the items. Although most players still didn't know whether the items were good or not, at least they were really being dropped. This point was already confirmed by the players in the two main cities, so they rubbed their fists and looked forward to the next round. The forum was filled with people who were far away from the city and didn't have the opportunity to participate in the two cities' activities. After seeing the dropped item, half of them asked what else was there, and the other half begged for teleportation scrolls. As time passed, in this hour, a few more items that had been thrown in the first round appeared on the forum. All of them made people drool with envy. Some players had already complained to the officials, asking for fair treatment and to participate in the "you throw, I'll pick" event in the two cities. Now, the officials were also paying attention to this event, and they even responded to the players. The official statement basically meant, "This is the player's own behavior, it's none of my business." In the blink of an eye, an hour passed. The fighting spirit of the players in the two cities that had been stirred up in the first round was somewhat extinguished. Out of 10 players, 8 or 9 were denouncing the very heaven-defying behavior of not throwing the items quickly. The second round quietly arrived. This time, no one saw anyone throw things into the sky, no one saw anyone quietly put things on the ground, no one saw anyone pretend to tie their shoelaces. In the two main cities, 25 places each, a total of 50 places, everyone heard a shout at the same time. "Hey! Look over there!" Everyone looked there, and so they saw what they had been waiting for an hour. Crazy snatching again, but this time, the very heaven-defying players didn't expose themselves. They all put the items in a certain place when no one was paying attention, and then gave the order to collectively shout such a shout. Crazy snatching, another round of crazy snatching. Crazy snatching, another round of crazy snatching. The players, who seemed to have lost their fighting spirit after being worn down for an hour, instantly displayed their positive vitality again. Everyone pounced on these 50 secluded corners, fiercely snatching these 50 unknown items. Success, failure, bragging, gossiping, breaking news, everything was a repeat of the previous round. In 2s and 3s on the forum, the items that had been thrown in this round appeared in 2s and 3s. In terms of value, it was comparable to the previous round. As expected, they were all the same items. And some attentive people quickly discovered that there was about an hour between this throw and the previous throw, and during this hour, there was no sound at all. Could it be that they were prepared to throw once an hour? This hidden pattern was discovered by the players very quickly, but how many items were thrown in each time? This should have been obvious, but until now, no one knew. After all, this required the 50 people who had picked up the items to drop at the same time, but who would have the time to do that? People were always like this. If they were lucky once, they would definitely want to be lucky a second time. After these 2 rounds, a total of 100 lucky people were excitedly preparing for the third round. For the third round, the players were also a little prepared. They roughly estimated that it would last for this hour. Seeing that the time was approaching, everyone became more alert. An hour was up. Everyone's ears perked up, and their eyes widened. Cloud City and Moonlight City were currently the 2 main cities with the most people, but at the same time, they were also the 2 main cities with the quietest people. In the end, there was no sound, and no one threw anything. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes. 10 minutes passed, and there was no news of any items being picked up. The players looked at each other. Who the fuck said that it would be thrown once an hour? Someone had already started cursing. After all, throwing once an hour was everyone's speculation. Someone was very heaven-defying, but he had never said such a thing. Have you finished throwing them? That's it? Damn, that's all. Too many people complained. This kind of complaint definitely wouldn't stop. Even if everyone was given an item, there would always be people who felt that another round was more appropriate. People were always greedy. While the players were discussing, another 10 minutes passed in the blink of an eye. Many people already thought that the equipment throwing event might be over, and they were all asking around for news on the forum. So at this moment, the third round of throwing quietly began. This time, very heaven-defying people chose a place with less people. After looking at their escape route, they each chose a method that they felt was reliable and threw the equipment. The equipment was quickly discovered, but the person who threw the equipment was nowhere to be found. This time, it was a silent throw, very much in line with the silent scene of the two cities during the hour. So, quietly, the third round ended. This time, there was no large-scale looting, because the throwing locations were remote places with very few people. At this time, it was really not easy to find 25 such places in the two cities, so they were late by 20 minutes. Everyone felt a little guilty, but Han family young master said, "The rules are set by us, and we can also change them." I said that it would be thrown once an hour, but I didn't say which minute of the hour it would be. Even if it was thrown at the 59th minute, it would still be considered an hour. Compared to the previous two times, the third time was really not as enthusiastic. Many players who heard the news were in disbelief and at a loss. "It's over. When did it end?" 10 minutes ago. Fuck, why did I only know about it now? The movement of the throwing was small, so the range of the news was small, and it spread slowly. This third round of throwing took quite a long time to be accepted by the players. And this time, the players who picked up the items seemed to be low-key, and the information on the forum was less than the previous time. Is it really going to end? Rumors started to spread again. Everyone felt that this event was going to slowly disappear in this kind of silence, so, the fourth round could not be more public. When the hour was up, the first to know about it were not the players waiting in the game, but the players in the offline forum. In the forum, a post suddenly appeared, previewing the 50 coordinates of the two main cities when the fourth round was thrown. Fuck. At this time, the players sitting on the computer and browsing the forum were all sad and angry. They hated it. Although they had first-hand information, they couldn't fly over and snatch the item. In the end, they could only contact their friends and relatives in the two cities to tell them about this news. The players in the two cities were in an uproar. When some people suspected that this post was a prank, they got an answer that it wasn't. This was because the ID of the post was clear, Brother Yu. The most ferocious Brother Yu on the forum, and also one of the very overpowered core members, Brother Yu. No one doubted it anymore, and everyone chose the nearest place to run. This was because it was said that the post was a preview, which meant that they hadn't started throwing yet, so they had to hurry and grab this place. Because of this post, the flow of people in the two cities became concentrated, which was rare. Although there were some players who didn't know about this, there were already empty streets in the two cities. So, at this time, a second post appeared on the forum. Because the location in the preview was too crowded, the thrower couldn't reach the scene, so he had to change it to the following location. Shwa shwa shwa, another 50 coordinates appeared. Fuck. The players in front of the computer all vomited blood, and those who replied with disdain, while those who contacted their friends and relatives hurriedly contacted them. When the news was sent into the game, this time no one made a sound, and they all quietly turned around and left. On the empty street, 50 very overpowered heroes waited. They needed to wait until someone came out of their line of sight, or else if they threw it now that there was no one there, the equipment might have already been taken by the system. This time, there was no doubt that the archers and bandits had a great advantage. Their speed allowed them to snatch back the second coordinates without any suspense. This time, they didn't come for nothing. They had already seen the masked player. After seeing them, the masked player threw down an item, turned around, and left. Another round of crazy running. This round, it wasn't just luck that mattered. It seemed like it depended on one's connections and character attributes. Players who didn't have connections wouldn't be able to receive information from their friends and relatives offline. Players who didn't have movement speed attributes wouldn't be able to win this round of running. At the same time, this round finally let the players know how many items were thrown, and because they were all obtained through friends and relatives offline, this time, there was a collective explosion of 50 items. Equipment, scrolls, precious trade skill materials, and rare quest items. 50 items. Every one of them had their own value, and none of them were dispensable. In comparison, the least valuable item was probably the electric enhancement scroll. However, this only meant that it wasn't valuable. For an electric mage, this item's practical value was the same as a water enhancement scroll. 50 items at once. That's a lot. The players exclaimed. After seeing the value of these 50 items, everyone was embarrassed to say that 50 items at once was not a good number. Moreover, no one suspected that there was anything fishy about this extremely overpowered behavior. The player had thrown out 50 items at once, a total of 200 items. Every one of them was valuable. Even if they swept through the entire auction house and trading street of a main city, they might not be able to find 200 items of such value at once. Moreover, the player had been thrown to you for free. How could you say that it wasn't a good number? The players waited expectantly for the fifth round of benefits. Compared to the previous competition of connections and movement speed, the fifth round had become a competition of luck. The very overpowered player who threw the equipment didn't do anything else after it was time. He just walked towards a random player and whispered, "You're in luck. Follow me." Therefore, the players who followed him received the items that were thrown out in the fifth round. Compared to the previous 3 rounds, this round was even more secretive. Therefore, Brother Yu made a post after the event, announcing that this round had ended and that 50 players had received the gifts. Then, 50 players also revealed the promised information. This was supposed to be a competition of pure luck. However, the final results showed that the proportion of female players who had won the prizes was surprisingly high. Among the 50 players, there were 44 female players who had won, and every single one of them was a beauty. There was no need to say anything. Even if most of the players weren't as obvious about this as Yu Tianxinming's Unscathed in Battle, this was indeed a popular activity. Therefore, under such circumstances, who would want a player who was pleasing to the eye? 44 players found a beautiful player. Being beautiful is also a very lucky thing. Unscathed in Battle expressed his opinion. No, this is also a type of strength. The young master of the Han family seriously discussed the matter. Chapter 877. Every hour after that, there were hundreds of different ways to throw items, and not a single one was repeated. For example, auctioning items at a very low price, sending them directly to random players through the mail, posting an announcement on the forum for players to send emails to Brother Yu, and then randomly send them back. Some players who weren't too far away from Moonlit Night Cloud City were filled with regret. Because the distance was too far, they thought that they definitely wouldn't be able to catch up if they walked. Who knew that the other party would throw items like this, and this torment lasted for an entire day. If they had immediately set off after receiving the news last night, they would have walked for more than 10 hours to reach their destination. Although they would have missed the first few rounds, they wouldn't have missed the later parts. But now, no one knew how long Against the Heavens would throw items for. Whether or not they should start walking from now on became a worry for these players. If they didn't go and the other party threw items for 3 days straight, they might miss out on their good luck. If they went and the other party threw items halfway, it would also make them vomit blood. In the midst of this dilemma, the players all had their own plans. Some immediately set off, while others gritted their teeth and hoped that the event would end soon. At this moment, every additional round of throwing was like a knife to them. They had the chance to participate in these rounds, if they had set off last night. According to the statistics on the forum, Very Against the Heavens had already gone through 10 rounds of throwing items. If the number remained the same every time, then there would have been 500 items consecutively thrown, including equipment, accessories, scrolls, living materials, rare quest items, and other popular items on the market. Even if the players who were lucky didn't need them for their profession, they would still be able to earn a lot of money. What was even more exciting was that after 10 rounds, Very Against the Heavens didn't seem to have any intention of stopping. It was already midnight, but the 2 cities were still bustling with activity. Many players hadn't slept since last night and had stayed up until now. Those who were still persisting were people with extraordinary willpower and a strong gambler's mentality. Apart from that, there were also many players who saw the number of people in these two cities. They felt that they wouldn't be so lucky and had already silently given up. However, these people didn't show up. This was because some of the players who were further away had started their journey last night. There were quite a few players who had traveled for 10 or even 20 hours to reach the two cities. From this, it could be seen that even the most determined people couldn't resist the temptation of reaping without sowing. What do we do next round? In Vary Against the Heavens Guild channel, a member of the item throwing group asked. I can't throw anymore, I'll throw again tomorrow. Yutian Shinming complained. At first, they found it interesting when they saw the players go crazy, but after seeing it over and over again, they started to feel numb. After becoming numb, they started to pay more attention to the value of the items in their hands. Why don't we just throw it away this time? Cloud Twilight said. He and his brothers were not like Imperial Heaven Divine Ming, who did not treat other people's plundering as something fun. They treated it as a mission, so it was natural that they were tired after running around for the entire day. How many things do you have on hand? Han Family Young Master asked. Brother Yu, the statistician, reported, we brought back a total of 774 items from Inch. We've thrown away 500 of them, so there are 274 left. If we continue like this, it'll take at least another 5 hours. Many people looked like they were about to vomit blood. Alright, then let's have a climax at the end. The Han family's young master said. Tell me what to do. After a day of torment, everyone's interest in creating a climax had actually waned. They weren't like the Han family young master, who was passionate about tormenting others. 50 people, 5 pieces for each person. Next, we'll throw 1 piece every 10 minutes. Including the wave we threw at the previous hour, there will be 6 waves in total. Let's make this hour more fulfilling for everyone. Han family young master said. Alright, we'll do as you say, said someone. For this wave, everyone can throw however they want. Han family young master said. Can we throw them at each other? Yutian Shinming asked. The chat was instantly silent. Honestly speaking, everyone was interested in these items, but they were intentionally avoiding it. They were afraid that if they thought too deeply about it, they wouldn't be able to resist the temptation. Even if they weren't taking out items from their class, it was still a large amount of gold. I just saw that everyone seemed to be in low spirits, so I made a joke to liven up the atmosphere. Yutian Shinming immediately said. Even in the chat, the sudden silence made him feel the awkwardness of the atmosphere. Han family young master didn't look down on him for the first time, he only said, everyone get ready, it's about time. Boom boom boom, Fiercely's final round began. Because the previous 10 rounds had been a steady 1 hour, the players had already accepted this setting, so many people only started preparing when the time was almost up. However, they couldn't do anything in this 1 hour gap, so many people were trying to figure out how overpowered would throw the equipment in the next round. After 10 rounds, the players felt like they were stuck in a maze. They didn't see the same method repeated. At this time, the last round of fighting had just ended, so it was the time when the players were the most relaxed. Looking at the time, there were still 50 minutes until the next round. Everyone was looking for ways to kill time. Suddenly, a figure appeared on a rooftop in the corner of the main city. He shouted, "The equipment is here." Then, he quickly disappeared. No one paid attention to him. Throughout the day, this kind of impersonation and equipment throwing prank had happened countless times. At first, the players fell for it, but then they angrily caught the prankster and killed him. Then, they became numb to it. At this time, it had only been 10 minutes since the equipment throwing, and someone had already come out to do it. Everyone looked down on this guy for being so bad at scamming people. However, among many people, there were still some who hoped to get lucky. After a day of training, these people had a deep understanding of overpowered shamelessness. They thought that these people were capable of using any method. This group of people had always fallen for the prank because they refused to give up any chance to the suspect. They were laughed at by many players, but they didn't give up. This time, they finally had a reward. A player who had climbed up the roof with great difficulty found that there really was an equipment on the edge of the roof. The equipment was golden, and it was obvious that it wasn't trash. The player quickly picked it up and immediately fell from the roof in happiness. His head was dizzy from the fall, but he kept shouting, "I got it, I got it." When the surrounding players saw this and thought about it, they knew that it wasn't a prank this time. It was actually real. They were so regretful that they beat their chests and stamped their feet. Similar scenes were happening in 50 places in Cloud Moonlit Night and the two cities. Although the 50 people threw it in different ways, the players' reactions were basically the same. Apart from surprise, there was more surprise. Thrown away, thrown away, thrown away, already thrown away. The news quickly spread across the two cities. Many people who were slow to hear it still couldn't believe it. What's thrown? What's thrown? It's very overpowered. A new round of things has been thrown. What? Already thrown? It's only been 10 minutes. Who knows? Anyway, it's already been thrown. Motherfucker, do you have any credibility? Didn't you say that it would be thrown once an hour? The surrounding people were silent. After a long while, someone said, "Who said that to you?" Indeed, throwing once an hour was a rule that the players concluded themselves. It was very overpowered and had never been publicly announced, although they had always done so. Annoyed, dejected, and cursed. This throw caught too many people off guard. Many players were in a bad mood. It was as if they had predicted this throw in advance, they would definitely be able to snatch the item. Just when there was a deathly atmosphere, a long string of news suddenly came from the street. Thrown, 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 thrown again. Very overpowered, thrown again. Equipment thrown again. Yes, thrown again. Fuck. Someone immediately looked at his watch and found that 10 minutes had passed since the previous throw. Combined with the previous throw, someone immediately came to a realization. Fuck, it's changed to 10 minutes. This was something that was very easy to discover. The players were glad that they had discovered it not too late. 10 minutes. This was a time that passed in the blink of an eye. Everyone rushed to the streets, looking for the masked heroes. Masked people had become the standard image of the players in the two cities. Many eyewitnesses said that the throwers had simple equipment and had no distinguishing features, but they were all masked. Therefore, the masked people became the creatures that the players of the two cities loved and hated. The thieves and assassins of the two cities didn't dare to cover their faces on this day because it was too dangerous. Such strong emotions were unbearable whether it was hate or love. With the observation skills of the Han family young master, of course, he had noticed this detail long ago and naturally reminded everyone. The reason they masked their faces wasn't because they were afraid of being recognized, but because they were afraid of being remembered. But now that masked had become a special appearance, they naturally couldn't use this method anymore. Therefore, in the next few rounds, they very overpowered the natural order of things like lucky draws through the mail. When the players realized that they had to guard their mailboxes, they changed to other methods. At this moment, it was already the end. Even if they were remembered, there wouldn't be any consequences. The throwers all took off their masks and mixed into the crowd. However, the players were still stuck in the era of looking for masked people. They really couldn't keep up with the pace. 10 minutes passed, and no one was discovered. However, 50 items just appeared on the streets without a sound. This time difference was undoubtedly too short. It was so short that the next round had already begun before the news of the throwers' equipment had spread to everyone's ears. The continuous throwing made every player excited. Clouds and Moonlight City was filled with people running wildly. No one could guess what these overpowered people were going to do. Some people climbed onto rooftops to look for suspicious figures. Some people squatted by their mailboxes and waited for this pattern to repeat. Some people even ran to the outskirts of the city. According to statistics, up until now, there hadn't been a single time when items were thrown outside of the main city. Perhaps this method would be used next. The overpowered throwers really didn't care about the players' psychology at all. In short, they did what was convenient. Most importantly, they had to ensure their own personal safety. They had seen the players who had evil intentions and had been trying to find the throwers to kill them. They hadn't even heard a word of thanks until now. Instead, they had been killed. Who could remain calm? This was the craziest hour of the day. It was also the last hour. Every 10 minutes, the players were excited again and again in the middle of the night. When the 750th item was thrown, the players were still waiting for the next 10 minutes. Suddenly, a post appeared on the forums. The next time would be the last time. This time, there would only be one place in each city that would throw items. However, each place would throw 12 items. The biggest climax really came at the end. Although the total number of items thrown this time wasn't as high as the previous times, the lucky person who appeared this time was likely to take all 12 items. There was no doubt that he would be the ultimate winner of today's grand prize. The players were all excited and anxious. They all hoped that the thrower would appear next to them, but they were also worried that the thrower wouldn't appear next to them. Time passed by, and everyone didn't know whether to continue or stop. If they left, what if they threw it at the place they had just walked past? If they didn't leave, what if they threw it at a place they could have walked to? Dang dang dang. At this moment, a loud bell rang in Cloud City. The foreign players were confused, but the local players of Cloud City all knew that this was the sound of their Cloud City's bell tower. Usually, the system wouldn't ring this bell tower. However, some bored players would go and randomly ring it from time to time. Today, everyone was focused on picking up equipment. Who would think of playing it? However, at this moment, the bell tower suddenly rang. Everyone looked at the time. It was less than 2 minutes from 1 a.m. Was this a signal from an overpowered person, indicating that the thrower was going to be at the bell tower? Or was someone purposely trying to create some suspense at this sensitive time to distract everyone's attention? Cleverness was often the victim of one's own cleverness. Smart people had too many ideas, and they were afraid that the sudden ringing of the bell tower was a trap. They were unlike the straightforward players, who immediately ran over to investigate the abnormal situation. They didn't make this trip in vain. The last throw in Cloud City was going to be at the bell tower. This ringing was to give the players an early warning. There were people under the bell tower. When they heard the ringing, many people began to run upstairs. However, this bell tower was the tallest building in Cloud City. From the bottom to the top, even the fastest players would find it difficult to run all the way up in 2 minutes. Moreover, the stairs of the bell tower spiraled upward. It was very possible to run too fast and get dizzy. These players who were in a hurry to run upstairs had undoubtedly made a mistake. They originally occupied an advantageous position, but because they wanted to make it more advantageous, they missed the opportunity. Just as they were halfway up the stairs, those who ran too fast felt dizzy and wanted to vomit. They suddenly heard a surging shout from outside the building. Everyone quickly looked for a place where they could look out of the building. They saw all the players raise their heads and shout in surprise. Something just flew past them in a flash. That's right, it was equipment, scrolls, items, and money. These were all money. They should have been able to stand downstairs, they should have had the opportunity to receive the large amount of money, but because of a momentary error in judgment, they lost such an opportunity. They could only watch the pie falling from the sky fall into someone else's mouth. They saw people fighting for these items downstairs. They didn't feel that it was a tragic scene. They only felt sad for missing such an opportunity. They had no chance to get the item. However, some people immediately remembered that the person who threw the item was still upstairs. They continued to rush forward, trying their luck. But there was no one on the roof at this time. Any random person with a teleportation scroll would have already flown away. Moonlit Night City didn't have a bell tower, so they couldn't do something like this. However, Moonlit Night City also had their own tradition, flag planting. In this place where the people were fierce, there were fights every day in the leveling area. Flag planting was something that they invented, and it was a way to avoid some trouble. They would mark their own leveling area and plant their own team's flag. For example, after the 10 Guilds Alliance planted their flag, no one would dare to provoke them again. Otherwise, if there were always people who came to fight and negotiate with them, how would they be able to level for the day? At this time, in the center of Moonlit Night City, 2 minutes before dawn, such a flag suddenly appeared. This was a flag that the players in Moonlit Night City didn't recognize. The flag seemed to have been made on the spot. There were no exquisite pictures on it, only a large word, Defy. This strange appearance of this flag caused a commotion among the players. Some people had already guessed that this was a signal given by Defy, but what did it mean? Did it mean that the last round of throwing items would be thrown here? However, since the appearance of the flag, this place had been surrounded by a sea of people. How could Defy come out? Teleportation scrolls. Many people thought of this, so everyone immediately began to grab the best position near the flag. The bloody battle that took place in these 2 minutes was more intense than any other leveling area competition in the history of Moonlit Night City. 2 minutes passed in a flash, and the place where the flag was planted suddenly glowed with white light. It really was a teleportation circle. The players' expectations were not wrong, but no one appeared in the teleportation circle. What appeared were 12 items piled on the ground. Yes, equipment, scrolls, props, money, these were all money. Everyone rushed forward without any regard for their own lives. Some people had already turned into white light halfway through the process. Who would be able to get it in the end? This was an answer that no one could predict. At the same time, Brother UID posted another post on the forum, announcing the end of the day's event. Butterfly Knot, the I Throw You Pick event has ended. What will be the reactions of all parties? Please see the next chapter. Chapter 878. After more than 10 hours, a total of 774 valuable items were thrown out. These were easily calculated figures. Even the players who had worked hard for more than 10 hours to no avail had to admit that this was an unprecedentedly large sum of money, even though they were filled with dissatisfaction. They could only blame their bad luck, but no matter what, they couldn't find anything that defied the natural order. It was very heaven-defying. The method of throwing the item in every round had also been calculated. Although it was very shameless to change, it had to be said that each method was quite fair and just, without any hint of favoritism. In such a situation, who else could they blame other than their own luck? The players who were lucky enough to pick up treasures finally had some free time and began to brag about it on the forum. Someone on the forum specially organized a post for these people to post. Many players were drooling as they read the post, while cursing the players who won the prizes to die a horrible death. However, seeing that many of the players who got the items died due to losing control of the situation, everyone felt a little comforted. Everyone knew that whether it was losing control or losing control, it wasn't a coincidence. After all, this was a game, and there were no restrictions. If there were no laws in reality, people who won 5 million on the street might not even have the life to spend it. Did Very Unbelievable have a grudge with Chi Studio? No one cared about this anymore. Instead, some people asked when Very Unbelievable was going to rob Chi Studio again, saying that they were all looking forward to this day. The game company let out a long sigh of relief after the event ended. Although it caused them a lot of trouble, it didn't cause any big trouble. Moreover, the enthusiasm of the players influenced them. The big boss personally said that they would learn from it. Learn from the way the players were aroused. The employees were speechless. Using such a method to arouse the players' emotions was a piece of cake for the game company, but of course, they couldn't do it. But what else could they do? Learn. Be flexible. The boss left after saying a few words, leaving the employees depressed. In these 10 hours, the one who suffered the most was of course the boss of Ing-Chi Studio, Gaisher Chi-Ying. To be honest, the people in the Eagle Group and his studio's business weren't any different. Therefore, although they looked worried and angry about the loot, it was hard to tell what they were really thinking. In the end, only the real owner of the items, Gaisher Chi-Ying, was heartbroken and wanted to commit suicide. As a studio, he had received a notice from the game company to temporarily ban the trading of teleportation scrolls. He knew that the mailbox issue was just a cover to control the number of people who could go to Cloud City and Night City. In the end, Gaisher Chi-Ying was also controlled. Even if he had people in the two cities who had the scrolls, they couldn't send them over. As the largest studio in the industry, he still had some connections with the game company. However, it was an emergency and he didn't have the time to mediate. Moreover, the big boss of the game company was personally paying attention to this matter, so mediating wouldn't be of much help. Gaisher Chi-Ying gritted his teeth and tried his best to contact the low-level employees in the two cities, asking them to bring back the equipment as soon as possible and reward them. However, no amount of reward could match the value of the equipment itself. Employees at this level usually didn't even have the right to enter the warehouse. It was clear that they were not trusted enough. At this time, the chances of finding the equipment were slim. Even if they did find it, they could sell it themselves and earn more than handing it over to the organization for rewards. In the current system of the studio, the higher-level employees were very formal and restricted, but it was hard to say for the low-level temporary employees. Those who wanted to pursue their studio as a career might hand it over to the organization for a promotion and a raise, but most of them just took a part-time job and earned as much money as they could. Matchless Hero knew that it wouldn't make much of a difference, but he still held on to a glimmer of hope. Every hour he tossed his money away, there was no news from the two cities. He could only watch helplessly as his money was tossed away. It was his money that was being tossed away. Fortunately, Gaisher Chi-Ying wasn't in the game this time. Otherwise, he would definitely be kicked out by the system. Looking at the joyful discussion of the players in the forum, Gaisher Chi-Ying was quite depressed. He ordered the gunners to mingle in the forum, trying to criticize the players from a moral point of view. He wanted them to realize that they were in the wrong and that they were helping the evildoers. The gunners were also paid to do what the players said. However, they felt that this was childish. If the players could return the equipment they found to Age's studio, world peace would have been achieved a long time ago. As the gunners expected, this kind of persuasion didn't work. The players didn't even bother to respond. At most, they would look down on them and say that they couldn't eat grapes. Angry, Gaisher Chi-Ying went to find the website reporters to look down on this behavior. However, the website reporters said without hesitation that it was impossible to look down on this map. Their website was supported by the players. If they looked down on everyone, the website would lose its reputation. After that, they even tried to persuade Gaisher Chi-Ying. So what if they look down on you? You can't find any of the equipment you lost. How much is it worth to look down on you? Gaisher Chi-Ying was so lonely. Things were completely out of his control. People threw his things, robbed his things, took his things happily, and talked about his things. However, he didn't even have a chance to participate. Gaisher Chi-Ying's mouse was almost crushed by Gaisher Chi-Ying. Fortunately, 5 Nights wasn't next to Gaisher Chi-Ying. Otherwise, Gaisher Chi-Ying wouldn't be able to control his emotions and would most likely kick 5 Nights to death. Just like that, Gaisher Chi-Ying followed this activity until 1 o'clock at night. How many items did Gaisher Chi-Ying have? Gaisher Chi-Ying knew this, and so did Gaisher Chi-Ying. When the throwing started from 12 to 1 o'clock, Gaisher Chi-Ying, who had been counting in his heart, knew that everything he had was going to be thrown away. Not even a strand of hair would be left. Moreover, he knew one thing better than anyone else: Gaisher Chi-Ying really threw away everything he had looted. He didn't keep anything for himself. Even Gai Shi was surprised. These people really wanted to piss him off. At 1:00 sharp, Brother Yu announced the end of the event on the forum. The players began to reflect on the event and discuss it. Unparalleled Wonder hadn't received a single message. He had pinned his hopes on his people snatching the loot, but it didn't happen. Perhaps the loot had happened, but the loot definitely hadn't been handed over. Matchless Wonder had logged into the game. 5 knights from the studio, Forever from the Eagle Party, and the others were all online. After suffering such a huge blow, they all guessed that the boss would retaliate crazily. The Eagle Party was ready, and 5 knights was waiting to be kicked to death by the boss. In the new warehouse, Gai Shi met his loyal subordinates. The warehouse that was looted by Gai Shi had been cleaned up. Without the 774 items, the warehouse looked empty. 5 knights wanted to quickly restock the warehouse and restore it to its original state. However, after thinking about it, he felt that such a childish thing was meaningless. As for Eternal, he was thinking a lot more. He thought about Gai Shi refusal to reconcile with Gai Shi. Gai Shi's unyielding attitude forced Gai Shi to continue opposing them, which led to this tragedy. With Forever's understanding of Gai Shi, he felt that Gai Shi's refusal to reconcile with Gai Shi wasn't due to his emotions. He must have a plan. However, it was extremely heaven-defying. Such a powerful counterattack was definitely out of his expectations. He always knew the source of Matchless Hero's confidence. No matter how the players fought with his gaming studio, they wouldn't be able to touch his foundation. However, this time, Matchless Hero's confidence had been shattered and his foundation had been shaken. What about the previous poaching? Unparalleled Wonder had suffered a series of setbacks. Was it just a coincidence that they had poached Unparalleled Wonder's members? If this was also instigated in secret, it meant that this person knew that they had to use a special method to fight against the workshop. Fighting and killing wouldn't solve the root of the problem. At this point, what would Gai Shi's next step be? Forever kept thinking about this question. He had some ideas, but he didn't say anything. He only wanted to hear what Gai Shi had to say. Gai Shi walked around the room, his expression calm. After walking around, he came before everyone and said, "The problem with the mailbox hasn't been completely solved." "I know." Forever nodded. 5 knights didn't say anything. It was already courageous of him to stand there. He didn't dare to say anything else. This is just a way for the officials to limit this incident. There definitely isn't any real problem with the mailbox. However, since it's just a pretense, I don't think they'll immediately announce that the problem has been solved. It'll take some time, Gai Shi said. Yes. Forever nodded again. How's the matter I asked you to do? Gai Shi asked. It's not going well. Forever said, especially after today's incident. These people know what's in our warehouse. Most of them don't want money. They want some specific equipment or items. Gai Shi's eyes twitched. Indeed, today's incident had also exposed Ing Chi Studio's background. From the items that were thrown out, anyone with a discerning eye could see Age Studio's business strategy and marketing methods. Some of the items that had a price but no market were thrown out. This naturally revealed that the price but no market was intentionally created by the studio. As such, the more scheming players would naturally think that Age Studio had more of these items. These items might not be sold even if they had money, so it was obviously more valuable to directly ask for them. What do they want? Gai Shi took a deep breath and asked. I've written it all down. Forever took out a few pieces of paper from his pocket and handed it to Gai Shi. Gai Shi took a look. The paper first gave a detailed introduction of each person's information, analyzed their value, and finally marked out their requests. These people came from various main cities in the parallel world. They all had one thing in common, they were all core members of their respective main cities. They had a wide range of friends and were quite popular. Are they all reliable? Gai Shiqing asked. I've selected all of them. They're all loyal people who keep their word. I don't think they'll use this method to trick us, Forever said. How many people are there in total? 31 people, Forever replied. Gai Shiqing looked through the information again. There were 31 people, but their backgrounds might not necessarily be from 31 guilds. Some of them had a wide range of friends and could have multiple backers. Some of them could even have the backing of an entire city. Alright, give it to them. Gai Shiqing gritted his teeth. Forever nodded and said, should we arrange a time for everyone to meet? Gai Shiqing nodded, you can arrange the time. When we meet, give it to them. Understood. Gai Shiqing turned to look at 5 knights. 5 knights had his head lowered like a child who had done something wrong. Gai Shiqing sighed and asked, have you found someone like that? 5 knights didn't even dare to raise his head, not yet. He had caused a disaster, but Gai Shiqing still hadn't reprimanded him. They were both doing their jobs, and Forever's side was doing everything in an orderly manner. 5 knights, on the other hand, had no idea what to do. 5 knights was feeling quite guilty. Why? Gai Shiqing asked. We've never met someone like that before, so we don't know where to start. I've already mobilized people, 5 knights said. Hurry up. Gai Shiqing said simply. He didn't reprimand him, nor did he encourage him. Who was he looking for? Forever muttered to himself. He had only just found out that Gai Shiqing had given 5 knights this order. He was becoming more and more certain that Gai Shiqing had some sort of plan. This plan must have been made when he decided not to reconcile with Very Defiant. The warehouse robbery was probably not part of the plan, but it didn't seem to affect the plan. But what was the purpose of this plan? From what he was told to do, it seemed like it was Very Defiant's revenge. It didn't seem to have anything to do with Gai Shiqing's business. Was this really a battle of personal feelings? Forever didn't believe it. He could clearly see that Gai Shiqing was more of a merchant than a player. Every decision he made was from a merchant's point of view. He couldn't see it because he was just a player. Forever sighed. He didn't ask or think about it anymore. Alright, you guys go do what you need to do. Gai Shiqing waved his hand and left with 5 knights. Cloud City, Very Defiant's base. A single room couldn't fit all the members of the guild, so all of the bases were opened up. Almost everyone moved their taverns into the guild base. The celebration took place in different places at the same time. With a common guild channel, common communication could be carried out here. This feels good, this feels so good, ha 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 ha. Cloud Midnight waved his bottle and shouted. The operation ended at 1 p.m., and there were still 10 minutes until 2 p.m. Although Cloud Midnight's alcohol tolerance wasn't outstanding, he was already drunk. It was clear how excited he was. His brothers had the same temperament as him. After 50 minutes, most of the men from the 10 Guilds Alliance were already drunk. Those who weren't drunk were those who didn't drink, and those who had a higher alcohol tolerance. However, they would probably be drunk within half an hour. They were ruthlessly suppressed by Ng Chi and the Eagle Group. Today, they could finally vent the anger in their chests. For these brave men of Moonlit Night City, there was nothing more satisfying than this. Ha ha ha, it would be great if there were a few girls around. Zhu Xian was even more unrestrained when he was drunk. Damn you, you pervert, get out of here. Don't embarrass yourself here, Cloud Midnight scolded Zhu Xian even though he was drunk. It was a skill that went deep into his bones. There's a beauty here. Zhu Xian staggered as he walked. He's really drunk, really. 2 of Yun Zhongmu's brothers who weren't drunk hurriedly came over and dragged Zhu Xian away. This bastard, he couldn't even recognize the young master of the Han family, and he actually wanted to tease him. Even though he was drunk, he was still half sober. Brother Yu Tian Shinming, and the others hid in a corner and secretly observed Han family young master's reaction. To their disappointment, Han family young master didn't react at all. Didn't he notice? Yu Tian Shinming mumbled. Impossible, unscathed in battle was certain. I thought there would be a good show. Brother Yu closed his notebook regretfully. In the other corner of the room, Drifting was holding a glass of wine and talking to Sword Demon. Boss Sword Demon, seeing that you guys are so happy, do you still think my plan is too much? That's two different things, Sword Demon replied indifferently. He was probably the only one in the room who was still sober after drinking. Obviously, Sword Demon wasn't excited about this. How regretful. When I threw the equipment today, I should have put two in my pockets, Drifting said. As long as you're still in the game, you have a chance to get any equipment. Sword Demon patted him. Well said, well said. Cheers to you, Drifting said and drank his glass. Sword Demon also drank his glass. Let's talk business, Drifting said. What? Sword Demon asked. Will the organization reimburse me for the portal scroll? Drifting asked. Sword Demon smiled, of course. Ha ha ha, I was joking. That thing is nothing, Drifting said. Hee hee, of course, it's not what you really need, Sword Demon said. Then what do I need? Drifting asked. I'm not sure. But I saw it, Sword Demon said. What did you see? Drifting was confused. You know what I saw, Sword Demon said. Drifting's face suddenly changed. You still have good friends in Eagle Group, right? Sword Demon said. It's the same here. I have good friends here too. How come I haven't seen Qianli all day? Drifting looked around. But compared to pleasing myself, friends are secondary to me, said Drifting. It seems that we are indeed different, said the Sword Demon. Indeed. Then next, it depends on your plan. Do you want me to leave, stay, or not let me walk out of this door? Said Drifting. The Sword Demon smiled. You should leave. How long can I keep you here? Killing you is more to venting Chi's anger. I don't want to do such a heroic thing. But don't expect us to reimburse you for the scroll. You used us, and it's not free. Ha ha ha, well said. Drifting also laughed. There were no seats in the room. Everyone was standing, so he didn't have to stand up. He turned around and was about to leave. He hadn't even taken 2 steps when he suddenly stopped and turned back to speak to the sword ghost. Chi won't give up just like that. They seem to have some sort of plan, and it's even before we do it. You guys should pay more attention. Thank you. I won't see you out. You don't have to see me out. Maybe one day, we'll run into each other again. Drifting smiled and left. Chapter 881. Among those present, Fei Tian Tong and Forever were influential figures among the players. The players looked down on the people in the gaming studios. Unparalleled Wonder was the boss of the gaming studio, and 5 Nights was the director of the gaming studio. He had a high status in the gaming studio, but in the eyes of the big players, he was just a small fry. Wu Yi, who had been ignored, could only go and introduce himself to the undying beggar. He stood silently behind Matchless Genius. Unexpectedly, Unparalleled Wonder turned his head and said to him, "Go get some wine." Chief Supervisor Wu Yi was immediately demoted to the role of a servant. 5 Nights, who had just been demoted, went to get some wine. Unparalleled Wonder and Fei Tian Tong drank and chatted happily. The 4 followers stood behind their boss and stared at each other. Forever and 5 knights were mentally prepared. They knew what kind of characters they would become, but Fei Tian Tong's 2 followers were not. They were all players. Even if one was a guild leader and the other was a commoner, there was no such thing as hierarchy. This kind of situation where one drank while the other stood would never happen. But now that the other party was putting on airs, they could only use this method to maintain the situation. The 2 brothers were no less depressed than 5 knights. Fortunately, Unparalleled Wonder was a mature businessman. After drinking with Fei Tian Tong, he greeted the 2 of them personally. "Why are you 2 standing? Have a seat. What's your name?" The 2 players saw that their boss greeted them, and their vanity was satisfied. They didn't stand on ceremony and sat down after giving their names. Forever and Forever didn't have any information on them. Unparalleled Wonder greeted them and said to the 3, "Make yourselves at home. I have guests coming." As soon as he finished speaking, another person came in. This time, he was alone. Unparalleled Wonder and Forever had received the message from Yang Ying. Since there were guests in the room, Yang Ying couldn't poke his head in and greet them directly. Safety first. Forever. This person took the initiative to introduce himself. He then asked Yongyuan that they were all invited by Yongyuan. "I'm Forever." Forever hurried forward and introduced Unparalleled Wonder to him. He gave him Unparalleled Wonder's information. Safety first in Blossom City. He's the leader of a level 5 mercenary group. He's very popular in Blossom City. He's ranked 6th on the Thieves leaderboard. He's a powerful character. Hello. Safety first, he took the initiative to greet Matchless Hero. He seemed very easygoing, unlike Fei Tiantong who always put on airs. Unrivaled Genius also casually exchanged a few pleasantries, then led him to his seat and served him wine, just like how he treated Fei Tiantong. At this time, there were still a few minutes before the appointed time. Level 4. Forever stood up and answered the question. Pfft. Someone burst out in disbelief. Only level 4. After the end of the city war, the majority of the players only knew of this guild's name. They only knew that they were the defending side that won the city war. As for the exact structure of this guild, only the most gossipy people would know about it. None of the big shots present had the leisure to do so. That guild in a foreign land had nothing to do with them. Not bad, level 4. Forever nodded. What's their average level? Someone asked. This is still unknown. Forever said. Then what do you know? Very Overpowered's current numbers, according to our estimates, should be around 200, only 200 people. Before Everlasting could finish his sentence, he was interrupted. His eyes were wide open. More than 200. Forever was already prepared for these people to make a fuss over nothing. The 31 people looked at each other in dismay. Every one of them had a powerful background and strength. To any one of them, a team of 200 or so players wasn't enough. However, to deal with these 200 or so players, the other side had actually sent 30 or so of them. Even if the other side had won the siege war by defending the city, they must have seized an opportunity. There was no way they could have defeated hundreds of thousands of players in a head-on battle. Just tell me what's so scary about this Very Overpowered? Someone asked. After all, they didn't think that England's boss was an idiot. To gather so many of them, Very Overpowered definitely had something up its sleeves. Qianli drunk. Forever said. Oh, I've heard of him. That melee mage. PvP madman. An idiot who only knows about bounty quests. His equipment isn't bad. Luckily his equipment is good. Otherwise, he'd be trash if he put all his points into agility. Does he really need so many of us to deal with him? Achoo! Gu Fei, who was in Cloud City, couldn't help but sneeze. You're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.